Hello, hello,
Hi.
hello. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to see y'all. Hey, y'all.
Hey, how you doing? Oh, it works.
Good, good. Good evening. Happy early evening. It's 4 o'clock. Good evening. So I guess we could say early evening, late afternoon, whatever, however you describe it. Welcome, everybody. Hope everybody's having an amazing day. Come on in. Come on in. We are also going live on Facebook. So tell your friends, tell everybody that the Building the Engine Annual Summit is getting ready to be underway. Hey y'all, it's so good to see some of y'all, man. It's been a long time. It's been a long time. Yes, I'm seeing a lot of my favorite folks, my co-laborers in this work, all getting on. Hey everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We'll get started in a few minutes. Just want to make sure, say hello and welcome to everybody. So happy to see y'all, man. So happy to see y'all. Listen, make use of the chat function. Let us know you're here. What up, Doe? What up, Doe, Detroit? Don't get boring on us now, right? Everybody's still sluggish from Thanksgiving. Shake off that sweet potato pie and that turkey and dressing. We say dressing in my family. I didn't hear about stuffing until I got in college. Uh, so shake off that turkey and dressing, and let's get it going. Hey, y'all, say something in the chat box. Let us know you in the house. Yes, excited, excited. I see Phyllis. Hey, great day in the neighborhood. We are now streaming live on Facebook. So I'm super excited about that. So if either of you, if any of you have a Facebook page and are willing to share the live stream that's going on right now, you are welcome to do so. We'll be getting started in a couple of minutes. What up? I see y'all in the chat. What up, though? Hey, y'all. Hey, y'all. It's so good to see. It feels like a family reunion. I see so many of the people that I love that I haven't seen all year long. Man, this year is completely a wash. Hey, y'all. Hey, we get started in a second. I'm happy to see y'all, man.
Hi, Lando.
Hey, that's Miss Loretta. Hey, Miss Loretta Powell.
Hi. I miss you.
I miss you. It's so good to see you.
You too.
Wow. Look at everybody. All right, it is 4:05. I am going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the 2020 Building the Engine of Community Development in Detroit Summit. We've been doing this a while now. I can't believe it. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Orlando Bailey. I serve as the Director of Engagement for Bridge Detroit. Bridge Detroit is a new journalism and engagement organization here in the city that was started by Stephen Henderson. So we launched in May in the midst of a pandemic. Let me tell you, if you're thinking about launching something in a pandemic, don't do it. Don't do it. Take the lesson. Take the lesson. Don't do it. I'm also the host of the Urban Consulate. Urban Consulate is a space where we convene people to have critical conversations about cities. And it's a cross-city network. We're sort of all over the country. And the host of a podcast, I know, right? Too many titles. The host and co-founder of a podcast, Authentically Detroit. Hopefully you all know about it, but if you don't, I'm going to tell you to go to whatever platform you get your podcast from and subscribe to Authentically Detroit. But welcome to the Building the Engine 2020 Summit. Yes, I got all the jobs. But I'm not quarterbacking this alone. I have co-hosts.
And hold up though, you sound like brother man off Martin, man.
Brother man from the fifth floor. Just chilling. No, I ain't never just chilling, Yusuf. I always got something to do. The theme for this year is the impossible is now possible. A new us is now necessary. Yusuf, what up though? You wanted to co-host. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
What up though, man? I'm here. It's great to be here. Great conversation. Detroit is nothing without its neighborhoods. I am co-director. I'm about to say my old title. I got a new title now.
You got a new title.
Right. I'm the Deputy Director of Strategy and Innovation at the Michigan Roundtable, and also I'm the Field Marshal for the Community Movement.
Wait, can we just give a pause right there and put some hand claps in the chat because Yusuf got a promotion?
Yeah. Thank you guys. I'm looking forward for this conversation like many of you are. So let's get it.
Awesome. And then we have to round out my crazy and Yusuf's crazy. We got Alondra here as a co-host. Alondra, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell the people a little bit about you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alondra Alvarez. I'm from Southwest Detroit, but I study at Michigan State University. So go green if you're a Spartan. I'm studying communication with a concentration in social influence. Like I said, I'm from Southwest Detroit, so I've been involved with Congress communities for like half my life already. Started in 2010. And I'm also a communication intern for 482 Forward. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm excited to share this virtual space with you all.
Yes, so we are so excited to have everyone here. I see that people are already going in about what school and stuff they go from. They come from, you guys. Oh, whatever. I didn't go to Michigan State or U of M, and so I see a lot of go green in the chat. Listen, Alondra, it's on you. Go ahead.
All right, so can everyone just please continue like putting your name and your organization in the chat just so we can get a feel of who's in the space with us?
Not what school you went to, but your name and your organizational affiliation in the chat. I see these green people and these blue people. All right, easy. Yeah, I see Congress of Communities in the house. Alondra, who you see?
Oh my God, it's going so fast, but I see East Side Community Network.
Hey, Tanya, what up, though? Maria Salinas, we see you. Hey, sis. Hey, y'all, welcome.
There's a Brightmore Alliance up in here.
Hey, Brightmore, let's go.
Phillips Edwards Bridging Communities.
Hey, Phyllis, that's my trusted co-host of the summits from the years past. She gets a break this year. Hey, Phyllis.
I've seen Lindsay Matson from Congress Communities.
Yep, I see Loretta from ECN. I see a lot. Oh man, so Ruth. Hey, Ruth Johnson from CDAD. Y'all, Madhavi. Hey, Madhavi, Executive Director of Community Development Advocates of Detroit. Hey there. Good afternoon, y'all. Jason Heaton is here from CHN Housing Partners. Partner of mine. Love it. Love it. So we'll continue to shout you guys out. Go ahead, Alondra.
All right. Am I continuing or is this?
Oh, no, we're going to Yusuf. Yusuf, it's on you, bud.
Hey, what up, though? Again, those who are familiar, Building the Engine has been around five years, and it's been doing a lot of serious work. And we know doing this work sometimes it comes at different stages. We learn that in the beginning, we learn that in the middle, we learn at the end, and we learn after the end. And so our goal and our focus has been to weave all that together. Sometimes we're like, man, why am I just hearing about it now? Why ain't hear about it then? And many of us in doing this work and are doing it for a long time know that there's folks that we want to save. It's just not enough of us. We wish we can duplicate our organization, our work. And so, in doing neighborhood work, it's about consistency, and the consistency will connect the dots. And this is where we're at now and where we've been able to continue to evolve. I came in contact with Building the Engine about 2-3 years ago. It was very interesting how I came in contact, but nevertheless, I'm here. We continue to build, and the opportunity is there because we all care about Detroit and our neighborhoods. So this was just being able to really solidify that and just keeping an open mind. Some things that you may hear and some things that folks you may not see. And the goal is to all of us to take ownership, and to take ownership is to ask questions and figure out how to connect to what's going on. Because at the central theme of this is Detroit neighborhoods. And this is what makes, this is the heart of Build the Engine. Bam.
So Building the Engine is a citywide collaborative initiative and process that will strengthen all of Detroit's neighborhoods by creating a well-coordinated, effective, and equitable system for community development work in our cities. So that's what building the engine is. And this year, of course, we are on Zoom. So we have to split what is normally a full 8-hour day. Y'all remember those 8-hour days? Y'all remember how we met Yusuf that one year early in the morning and he was with us all day, kicking our butts that year? Listen, it's not this, it was not an 8-hour day. So we have broken up the 8-hour day into 2 3-hour Zoom sessions on 2 different days. So day 2 will happen tomorrow at the same time. And we're happy to tell you that after the summit, all of you who are attending will receive a small gift card. Yes, you will get a small gift card as a token of our thanks for taking the time out of your busy, busy days to participate. So let's look at the goals and the agenda for today. Maggie, next slide. The goals for today. What we want to do is we want to envision what needs to happen in the neighborhoods, given that the impossible is now possible. We want to bring many young voices into the discussion, and that is what we will be doing today. We want to lift up the many examples of the work that young leaders are doing in the city. So we're celebrating our young folks today. I love it. Discuss how we can all work together. So those are the goals for this year's 2020 Summit today and tomorrow. We want to do really quickly just a brief overview of the agenda for today so that you know what's coming up next. So right now, we are in our opening remarks, but we will have a facilitated conversation. Alondra will quarterback that along with myself and Yusuf, and she's going to introduce all of the panelists. That's going to go until about 6:15. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is great. So we may not even need all of the time. And then from 6:15 to 6:30, there will be some closing remarks, and we want to hear from you. Once again, what are the big themes that you heard today? Think about this as you listen to our dynamic panelists. Did you choose? And then we want to know about tomorrow. We're going to have you sort of pregame tomorrow with the breakout sessions. We're going to preview some of the breakout sessions that we have tomorrow. And so we're going to hear from our panelists, and then we're going to have a pretty hopefully iterative and iterative discussion with your participation. This only works when you participate. Once again, this is a 2-day summit, and we hope people will rejoin us for tomorrow for day 2. So you still have to register for day 2 if you haven't already. You're here today, that means you registered for day 1, but make sure that you register for day 2. And we want to remind everybody that the event will be recorded, and the video and the recording will be posted on the Building the Engine website. And with that, I am going to turn it over to my trusted co-host, Alondra.
Okay, so I have the honor of introducing all of our panelists. They are young leaders from Detroit who are doing amazing work. So we want them to introduce us to the work that they do and just give us some information and feedback of how we can either support their work or what we need to do to help them. So our first panelist is Izzy Figueredo from Michigan Roundtable. We also have Mohammed Muntakim from DPSCD All for Eid campaign. We have Gabriela Santiago Romero from We the People Michigan, Landis Spencer from Detroit Socialists of America, Naija Valdez from Inside Southwest Detroit and the Equitable Internet Initiative, and we have Nikhil Waltz from Detroit Wolfreed. And those are our panelists for today.
Yes, and I'm super excited. And so the panelists will each have about 5 minutes to, answer, a really big question. And then we'll have, time to get into a really healthy discussion. And so, a global pandemic, a national race reckoning, a crumbling economy, a US election that, we're really now just feeling comfortable with saying, hey, this is the clear winner. In an upcoming mayoral election here in the city, the impossible is now possible, to reinforce the theme here. So a new us is now necessary. So in light of all of this, panelists and everything that you're gonna say, help us answer in light of all of this, what should happen next in our neighborhoods. And so we are going to go to let's start with Landis.
Hey everyone. Thank you all for putting this on. I am so honored to be on a panel with amazing organizers. So this is a really big honor. Like the introduction said, my name is Landis Spencer. I'm with the Detroit chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America, and I co-chair the Black and Brown Alliance within that group. And so our main focus over the last 8 or 9 months has been around policing. And so to answer the question, yeah, this, as we all know, this year has been insane for all of us, between COVID, between the economy, between the movement for Black lives. What presents us in 2021 is the aftermath and the culmination of all these things that are happening. And this is, ever present in Detroit. And so the building blocks for a strong city and a strong community overall starts in our neighborhoods. And so the first thing that's necessary is that we all need to be more rooted in our neighborhoods, more involved with the daily lives and experiences of the people in these neighborhoods. Yusuf had a great example, like, people may not like Duggan or whatever, but they notice when a park is cleaned up or a park is built. And so we need to be there in those people's lives, handing out food, organizing drives, organizing like book giveaways, many things that community movement builders do. And then furthermore, we need to just be talking to these residents. The DSA plans to start doing some deep canvassing around facial recognition and defunding the police, because we have to really see where these people are at, what are their concerns, how do we move them, how do we get them to connect with these issues. Something such as Proposal N won overwhelmingly. And so part of that is a failure of all of us organizers to not make our case and not be united on a front on why that was such a bad thing. And part of that starts with being rooted in these neighborhoods. The second part of that is to start organizing amongst ourselves. There are many silos here in Detroit. We have people doing great work on water. We have people doing great work on housing. We have people doing great work on foreclosures, but we have to unify behind a unified vision for Detroit to really culminate our efforts to present a narrative against what's going on. Because the people currently in office do not have our best interest at heart, to say the very least. And so combining our efforts and working together is the best way to create change in the city. And this summit is a great place to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Landis. Let's hear from Izzy. Izzy, you got 5 minutes.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Izzy Figueiredo. I'm 22. I use any and all pronouns, and I'm a youth organizer with Michigan Roundtable. So this past year, I've been working a lot on, pre-COVID, I've been working on writing up a youth program proposal for Roundtable. I've been working on putting together this youth needs comprehensive assessment with a social work partner at the time. We were planning to propose a program in the spring and then launch it in the summer of 2020. This was not possible because of COVID, but that is okay, because what I ended up doing instead is taking some extra time to research what youth need looks like during COVID, and also what social justice, online social justice programming can look like during this time as well. When I think about this question, I come back to the one youth need that's become more and more apparent to me over the past few months, which is the need for mental health support. I think a crucial change that Detroit could use in the next year is a widespread adoption of trauma-informed approaches from both the community development world and the social justice world alike. What I mean by a trauma-informed approach is basically just running with the assumption that the people you organize with, the people you work with, whatever it may be, more likely than not have had some sort of history of trauma, and just being sensitive to that. We know this year has been absolute hell for all of us, though definitely some of us more than others. We know that Detroit was hit pretty hard by COVID back in March. And about 9 months later, we are not the hardest hit city right now, but things are still pretty scary. We know also that Detroit is one of the blackest cities in this country. And right now we're going through a time where Black pain and Black suffering and Black death is a lot more visible to us right now, which is definitely contributing to a lot of Detroiters' stress and fears right now. I also know that practically every young person I've talked to in the past few months is grieving something. Some are grieving the literal loss of their grandparents, parents, or friends to COVID. Others are grieving the loss of financial stability right now after losing a job during a shutdown. And I think a lot of us right now are grieving the loss of our safety right now as the world looks really, really unstable. So my idea, what I think trauma-informed care looks like is just taking the time first and foremost to learn about what trauma looks like, both in yourself and in other people. So that when trauma comes up, because it's not an if, it's a when, you know how to respond to it. I think also trauma-informed approaches look like just making sure that in every environment you interact with, you're encouraging and supporting self and community care practices. This can be as simple as asking the people you're organizing with at the beginning of the week, hey, how are you? And really taking the time to listen to them. Or it can be as complex as planning a community event around learning about what generational trauma is and how you can break the cycle. To me, at the root of trauma-informed approaches, it's just making sure that everyone around you is encouraged to ask for what they need when they need it. Thank you.
Pretty powerful stuff. Thank you. Thank you, Izzy. Next up, Mohammed, we would love to hear from you.
Hello, everyone. Like they introduced, my name is Mohammed Muntakim. Just a little bit of background. I'm currently a senior at Cass Technical High School, in the heart of Detroit, as you all know, and also serve as the president of the Muslim Student Association there at the school, which is the only Muslim student association in the entire city of Detroit, out of Detroit Public Schools. And the I guess the biggest thing that I kind of worked for over the past years is our DPSCD All Free Eid campaign. So a background for that campaign would be, as most of you guys know, our Detroit, the city is very diverse. Many communities live here, among which are a lot of Muslims. Detroit has a huge Yemeni population, a huge Bengali population, which relate to the having a huge Muslim community in our city. But however, our public school system did not always observe the holidays for the Muslim community. So over the past years, we worked towards that, and ultimately Detroit Public Schools Community District agreed to honoring the holidays of Eid in the upcoming school calendar. For me, through this campaign, the main takeaway was, as I worked with various community members, various students, teachers, and community organizers, I learned that the effort that was there was universal. It brought in a big scope of different people, various people, a very diverse group of people, many of whom did not share our faith, but they were still willing to work for us. They were still willing to put in their time to fight for the Muslim community, even though they didn't share the faith. And I think that was my biggest takeaway, because it truly showed me when people try to come together for a common goal, to stand up for each other and stay united within the diversity, that you can accomplish anything that you set towards. So given the question, I think in terms of Detroit's neighborhoods and Detroit's future, I think the only way forward is if we're willing to do it together. So if we're willing to put our differences aside, and we're willing to put our differences aside, but also celebrate our differences, acknowledge each other's differences, and elevate those differences, and work towards attaining equality and also equity for everyone in our communities. That's the only way we'll be able to reshape Detroit's neighborhoods to what we want it to look like. And in terms of stepping up, again, this whole initiative, this whole campaign was led by youth, high schoolers, with the help of different community organizers, community organizations, and community members, teachers, parents. But ultimately was started by youth. So once we center youth voices and let them lead, I think we can accomplish a lot. But I believe the only way we can move forward is if we do it together. Thank you.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Wow, thank you, thank you. We honor you and we honor your work. Next up, we want to hear from Gabriella.
Great. Hi, folks. Thank you so much. Everyone that's here, everyone's on the panel. It's really nice to see familiar faces and friends. For folks who don't know me, my name is Gabriela. I use she, her pronouns. And why I do this work is because it's very personal to me. So as a community organizer, we share our stories. I'm sorry if you've already heard mine, but I often start by sharing about the first time that I found out I was poor. So I was in middle school watching my mom cook dinner for us, and I was crying to her for some new Nikes. And she was like, no, I can't buy you any. And I couldn't understand why she couldn't just buy me a new pair of shoes. And so I asked her, Mommy, are we poor? And she turned around and she laughed and said, you didn't know we were poor? And no, I had no idea that we were poor. But that was only because growing up, there was always food on my table. Our lights always worked, our heat was always on. But I didn't know that that was because my mom worked 7 days a week, every single waking hour that she could. We were so poor, we were able to receive certain services like WIC or food stamps. And it was later in life that I made the connections to policy and leadership. Growing up in poverty as an immigrant, my mom said, go to school, get a good education. And so I did. And living under this capitalistic system, I thought the only way to survive was to go into business. So while studying international business, quickly realized why it was that we got paid so very little, why it was that the planet was being destroyed currently by corporations, how it is that folks didn't get rights or benefits. It was through lobbying, through kickbacks to people that were in leadership. But thankfully during that time, Rashida Tlaib was my state rep. I saw a woman of color, someone from the neighborhood, someone that's from here, outwardly calling out Marathon for polluting Southwest Detroit, saying that corporations should stop getting tax breaks, and saying that we should be investing real money into our Black and Brown communities. And that's what got me into this work, realizing that there are two worlds, there are different kinds of leadership, there are different kinds of work being done at the same time. And I really wanted to be involved in the work that was grassroots, in the work that was, as you hear through the panelists, that is connected to our stories through our lived experiences, and also to the solutions that we know we need in order to better our communities. And that's what I'm doing now through the People as the Policy and Research Director, really focusing on what are the campaigns, the policy solutions that we need, and what is the research behind that we still have to do to completely understand how to make that happen. And I think that kind of goes into my tips on what we have to do as Detroiters in the communities to create the change. In that research, the research has to be centered on race and class. We need to be very honest about the classism, the racism that has been going on in Detroit, in this country, for us to really understand why it is that we got to this place, and how it is that it's gotten so worse. So while growing up, I was able to receive food stamps and WIC. Those services, that money is no longer what it was. And that is why, because of the leadership that we have. But we don't know that, we don't think about those things. And it's really important for us to think those things through. So we have to do a lot of learning, a lot of unlearning, a lot of healing and understanding that we've been hurt. We have been put to the side, we have been disinvested in, but then together start to be honest about the work that we have to do in order to really service us. And that's number two. I would love more real investments, more real love, just as much or as more to be given into Black and Brown communities as they are right now given to new white gentrifiers coming to the city. So growing up in Southwest Detroit, we never really had streetlights. We never had really wonderful paved roads. We would cry about those every year whenever we could at community meetings. But as soon as Detroit started to get hip, as soon as the Southwest started to get cool, we got bike lanes. So that is already immediately valuing white folks, putting their bodies before ours, putting their safety, what they need before us, and they haven't even been here as long as we have. So we have to be honest about the history, the racism, the classism, and the real money and love and investment that we have to be putting into our communities. And lastly, I would just say that we have to invest, really honestly invest in leadership. So I love seeing Christine here and people here from COC and just the orgs in Southwest that have really paved the way for me to be this outspoken and passionate about my community and about Detroit. We have to really give them the scaffolding and tools and voice. And not only that, but then giving them the role to actually power and work their craft. I believe in young people. I started to do, I say it was in the 5th grade, it was in middle school when I started to protest, when I started to learn about racism, started to learn about sweatshops. Get them while they're young. We as young people understand what the issues are. I think even more now during this pandemic, children aren't able to go to school. They can't go to class because they don't have Wi-Fi. People understand, children and young people understand what the problems are. We should also be giving them the tools that they need to solve those and to address those
See you
themselves.
later for pickup.
So thank you all very
You
much.
the
The adults in this room that have given me the love and investments into my leadership. It's really helped me get here. It's why I did it for Girls Making Change. And it's something that I think that we should continue to do with the young people in our lives, in our communities. And so thank you so much for putting this together and for giving that time to share.
Just powerful. Listen, we want to make sure, so we have note takers for the entire meeting. And so the note takers are trying to keep up with how fluent and well-versed everybody is in their work. But they're asking me to tell everybody to slow down a little bit. Everybody's speaking a little too fast for them to keep up. Thank you for being so passionate, but just slow it down just a little bit so that we can make sure that we have the notes. I don't know about our audience, but I'm getting so much life right now, man. This is amazing. Next up, we have Nyasia from Inside Southwest. Come on, blow us away.
Hey.
I know you got it.
What's up, everyone?
What up?
Geez, I thought I knew what I was gonna say, but all these other panelists are just so dope, and I just want to really uplift, what Landis was saying, what Muhammad was saying, what this guy was saying, just about the people that are the people that are most affected by the decisions need to be making the decisions. Like the people that are, what something is about, they need to be the ones making those decisions. If something is about education, there needs to be younger people at the table. If something is about food and wellness, everybody from the neighborhood needs to be a part of that. And so I just wanted to uplift some of those things that they were saying, and there's just so many gems that were dropped. So my name is Nyasia, born and raised Southwest. And I work with a couple different organizations, but I'll be uplifting the work from Inside West today and the Equitable Internet Initiative. And so during this pandemic, and even before, so for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been trying to figure how to figure out how to connect people in the neighborhoods with low-cost, high-speed internet. So not a lot of people really understand the different politics that come with internet, which it shouldn't even be a point of conversation for me right now. But there's parts, I know specifically for Southwest, and there's 3 target areas, pilot areas for the Rural Internet Initiative. So there's the North End, there's the Island View neighborhood, and then there's Southwest. And so in all of these neighborhoods, there's zones that internet companies don't invest infrastructure in. And that means that people are only able to have one island for internet. And so in homes where people are renting, which a lot of families in Detroit are, if someone runs up the internet bill in that household, if a new renter is in there, Comcast or AT&T or whatever, they can be like, nope, we won't let you get internet because somebody in that household ran up the bill $200 or $300. and now we won't reconnect you because we think that you're trying to scam us or something, whatever. And so some people, and with the bait and switch that different companies have, that sometimes happens. If you agree to $20 a month, that barely make that happen so that your kids can be on the internet to do homework, or for someone to fill out a job application. We know that a lot of city services, and even so, like a lot of other services, are being put into a digital realm. And so a lot of people don't have access to these resources. And so since the pandemic has happened, we've been able to connect local hotspots with different organizations, like urban neighborhood initiatives, where we're able to put internet in a safe location for people to go and in the park and do their homework if they have to, which is very drastic. I mean, to even have to do something like that, but this is something that we have to do with the current circumstances that we have. And with COVID being so spread in our neighborhoods, creating safe locations for people to connect to internet. And so, yeah, there's a lot more that can be said about each of those things, but let's see. There's so much there's so much in so little time. So I don't want to go too heavy into it, but I also want to, like I said, uplifting that people in communities have answers, that to these things. They just haven't been asked sometimes. And so I've been doing some different organizing for the last 10 years. I'm 25 years old, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, things like that, and pass it to the next panelist.
Naija, thank you so much for all your work. Can we just give a round of applause? I think the internet is just something we're so used to having, and we just assume everyone has that. So thank you so much for your research and your work. And I get to introduce our next panelist, Nakia Waltz from Detroit Will Breathe.
Thank you so much. My name is Nakia Wallace. I am an organizer and a co-founder with Detroit Will Breathe, which is an organization that was formed in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. And what we do is fight against systematic oppression, police brutality, and general racism.
And you forgot one thing. You my little sis.
And Yusuf Shakur's little sis. I love me some Yusuf Shakur. So the question is like, where do we go now in our neighborhoods? And what we saw after the murder of George Floyd was the largest social movement in the history of the United States, meaning there were more people who have been participating in the fight against police brutality and the fight in defense of Black and Brown life over the past 5 months than have participated in any other social movement in this country. And that's really important for us to understand as we move forward and as we look at ways to really fight for access to a quality like standard of living in our neighborhoods. And I think that's going to take a few things. One, we all, like to talk about the work that we've done, and I think it's great, but we always need to make sure that we don't see ourselves as anybody's savior, that we don't see ourselves as replacing anybody or as standing, we can't replace people. People have to fight for themselves. And so the question is, how do we help support fights that are existing, and how do we help support people who want to make fights in the neighborhood? And so that's a question of what empowerment actually looks like. Like, when do people feel the most empowered to fight? And I think, so that's one. Like, we need to really be thinking about what that looks like and what it looks like to organize in the communities to help build sustained resistance and to help build fights for the various different fights that we have to fight, but really leveraging where we are right now in the momentum of this movement. That's a really big thing. And it's going to look like realizing you're not authorized to make any deals on behalf of the community. So you get a meeting with the mayor, you get a meeting with the governor, you get a meeting with, I don't care who it is, the Department of Neighborhoods, that's great. But you make that meeting public, or you take what they said back to the community and you discuss it in a public meeting. And you don't, sign any deals on behalf of a community. The other thing we got to do is just think critically about everything and about everybody. Like, some people put themselves in front of a lot of people and speak, and they get called leaders, right? But they're not leaders just because they said they are. You kind of got to prove that. I also think we need to not be afraid to break ties with people who just are on the wrong side of history. And so, that means not being afraid to come out against the Democratic Party. That means not being afraid to come out against any, politician, preacher, reverend, spokesperson, or anybody who is saying something that does not serve the best interest of our communities. And just, yeah, not being afraid to do that. And the other thing we have to do is really read and study history and look at the ways that change and progress has actually happened in this country, right? And the way that we've always gotten any type of progressive change has been through a sustained struggle. And that's just the truth. Any human or civil dignity or right that Black and brown people certainly have in this country has come through a fight. And so really looking at ways to build those fights and engage with those fights and push those fights to where they need to be, by fighting alongside people and not trying to see ourselves as saviors or as, like, the voice of Detroiters or anything like that, and not being afraid to call out anybody on the wrong side of history.
Wow, that's dope. Dope panelists, dope information. Can we get put some thumbs up, man, for this great information that we received? And one thing we just want to acknowledge in the process of getting to this stage, because a lot of times when we want to organize and the question like youth, what about youth? What we should get more youth involved. And sometimes what happens is, even though our intent is meant well, we end up tokenizing them. We end up pimping them out. And part of this process was having that tough conversation to make sure that wasn't the case. And sometimes it even happens, hey, let's go get the hand-picked people, the nice looking ones and whatnot. I mean, our objective was to get a well versed of folks who brought different elements. There was a young person that couldn't be here today that was on a discussion with us last week that said experience is what radicalizes you. And what we just heard right now is the experience of what they've been through and what we all been through, what we all can relate. And we all can think back to that moment, whether it was the poverty or watching our mothers get their butt beat or something, right? That was that spark. But it's the reading, it's the other stuff that helps add the contextualization. And so what we want to do now is transition, and because what we don't do sometimes in this work is take moments of silence to breathe and recognize those who lives have been taken. But also, as we take this moment of silence and think about those who have been killed by police brutality, let's think about those who are suffering against social brutality, against economic brutality, who's against political brutality. Those things are tied together. I mean, and particularly in a city such as Detroit. Until recently, we saw, the upscale and the shootings, by Hollywood created officers. But by Duggan's administration, we've continued to see people waters get cut off. By Duggan's administration, we continue to see people get pushed out their neighborhood. By Duggan's administration, we continue to see people lose their houses and et cetera. I mean, and that's a form of violence. And so we're talking about neighborhoods and people. We have to look at all of that. So we'd like to, at this moment, take a moment of silence for those who have lost their lives and those who are in the struggle and not trying to lose their lives. So now we're gonna come back and we're gonna have open up to the audience of people to get some feedback. You know, we've heard a lot of information, and so what are some of your thoughts of what you heard from the panelists? And I think keeping in mind, like there's an intersection. You know, that intersection it weaved throughout Detroit. It weaved, you know, class, race. You know, it touched a lot of different things. So if it's missing some, share, but some that was impactful, let's hear it.
Yeah, so what we want to do is we want people who may want to speak during this Q&A period to use the raise hand function. You can click on your picture in the chat. You click on your own picture and you'll see the function whereby you're able to raise your hand, or you can put your comments in the chat function. At the bottom of your screen, there is the chat function, and you can put your comments and questions there. Lauren and Maggie will monitor the chat and help us include as many voices as we possibly can. And our note takers are doing an amazing job. Remember to speak just a little bit slowly so that they can capture with fidelity what we are talking about. So we're going to open it up. We hope the panelists' comments got you thinking. We're also going to show you some of the work that Building the Engine did in 2018, describing a vision for neighborhoods. And this might be for a vision for neighborhoods and putting out a definition on equitable development. So this may be food for thought as we prepare to dive into the discussion. And it simply says that all people in every neighborhood live, work, and engage in healthy, thriving, sustainable, and inclusive communities. That's simple. All right, so remember to use your raise your hand, use the chat function if you need to. Lauren or Maggie will let us know who we need to be calling on, but we can, what are your thoughts on what the panelists have said so far? Anybody want to just react first to these amazing young stars?
I think everyone's lost in words because it was just so amazing.
Yeah, so I see some folks in the chat saying how powerful it was. Yes, grateful for you in Building the Engine and the summit. This experience will radicalize you. These panelists were awesome. And so while our attendees are thinking of questions, I can start off with some questions. And I really want to start by, I want to go back to something that Izzy said. And Yolanda, we see your hand raised. And so you're next. Thank you, Yolanda. But Izzy was talking about, this new normal that we are trying to create. And this new normal, within this new normal, there is an acknowledgement of mental health challenges and trauma that we have faced as Detroiters. And Izzy, I want to ask you about trauma-informed approaches and the grief that we are all collectively experiencing being palatable with the lens of, it's something that, people of color, especially Black people, don't really get into. You know what I mean? We don't really get into, going to therapy or talking about, our mental health. If you've seen the movie Soul Food, they put the uncle with the mental health challenges up in the room and we never seen them. Like we never seen them. It's something that we typically sort of sweep under the rug. How are you having, or how do you imagine having these kinds of conversations, and how do you imagine facilitating trauma-informed community building and approaches in communities that haven't really acknowledged it at mass at times in the past?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that putting this care into action can look like a lot of different things, but I think a great start, especially for communities who maybe have not had a lot of experience in I'll say like clinical trauma care, like say talk therapy, for instance. I would encourage like what I would describe as non-conventional mental health practices, like say, I don't want this to sound cliche, but say something like yoga or like meditation, which involves a connection both with your physical body and with your physical senses and your mind. I think it would just non-conventional things that, that like practices that can encourage a connection between body and mind, but that you don't necessarily come to mind when we're imagining like clinical trauma care. I think one thing that has really helped me, for instance, is attending community care circles with Detroit Disability Power, where I get to meet with a bunch of disabled people of color from Detroit mostly, and just talk about like what my week has been like. And then I can hear from other people like some different practices that have been helping them through their weeks. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I want to get to some of the questions. I want to get to some of the questions in the audience. I, of course, have all the questions, but I know Yolanda raised her hand. So, Yolanda, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question, that would be great. See, Yolanda.
I really didn't have a question. I had more of a comment on something Gabriella said. So if you
go for it, yeah.
Oh yeah. So I was just, when she talked about the bike lanes, that really like kind of pulled at my heartstrings, because I wasn't living in Detroit at the time that they were installed, but I was just like, when I came home, really wondering like, how did this happen? Like, what was the process? Like, did they talk to the community? And I think that, in talking about what it is that Detroit neighborhoods need, I think that one thing we need across the city is civic education and education about the city budget and how it works and how decisions are made, and the fact that we have a right to, help make those decisions. And to hold our elected officials accountable. I don't know, like how many times I've talked to people, they don't know who their council members are. They don't know what city council district they live in, let alone, how their council member, is voting on things that affect their lives so drastically. And I just know through my conversations and working at CDAD and talking to our members, it's been very hard for folks to be engaged during COVID. And next year it is a political battleground in Detroit with all of our council members and our mayor up for re-election. And I think that as a sector, we need to be exhausting every avenue that we have to ensure that people are informed and can discern the truth from a lie. Because a lot of people go in and vote and they don't even know what they're voting for. And that's an issue. So that's my comments on that.
No, thank you, Yolanda. Gabriella, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, just real briefly, thank you for sharing. And I completely agree. The public civic education piece is super important. And I'm actually gonna drop my email because Yolanda, I would love to like after this have a one-on-one with you, of course, to talk to you about how we can make that happen. The policy and research team at We the People, we've held a lot of research workshops where we actually dove into how to look into budgets, how to look into who are the big corporations in your community, who are the big players that we should be looking out for. And for 2021, we really want to ramp up more the political education piece. We're gonna launch a county specific campaign going through the county budgets, county leadership, because no one, absolutely like no one knows about that. And I think that's a problem, and on purpose. The less we know what to advocate for and what to ask for. And it's county government that is incarcerating our people currently right now. And that's foreclosing on thousands and thousands of Detroiters. So would love to, anyone who's interested in this political education piece, I have a team, small but mighty, and a lot of like momentum and energy to put behind that, because that is one of like the pillars that we should definitely be striving for, is that political education. And not only that, but then like what are ways that people can engage in that, and one way is to hold people accountable, but it's more than that. We can also be delivering the budgets that we want to see to them. We can also be delivering the policies that we want to see to them. And it's inspiring to see that there are progressive or local officials who are elected into office who we can talk to and who can be helping us actually craft this work. So thanks for mentioning that. I agree it's really important, and I would love to work on that with you.
Wow, look at the connections happening right now. I see that Sid has his hand up, and then we're going to go to some of the questions in chat. Lauren Boone is going to read some of the questions in the chat, but we see Sid had his hand up. So Sid, go ahead with your question or comment.
Cool. Thanks, Orlando. I just want to start off by thanking everyone on this panel. I think between all of you, you all carry generations of wisdom and experience. So I just want to thank you all for your time and sharing your narratives and sharing your experience and continuing the fight that generations before us have kind of started and the fight that we carry on. So myself, my name is Cedric. I'm a medical student at Wayne State, and kind of coming from the space of medicine and healthcare and understanding how we've actively and even passively at times continue to perpetuate a lot of these systems of injustice for Black and Brown communities. One of the things that we kind of seen, I think Nakia spoke on it very well, is how the country more or less kind of rallied, and you see this new wave of kind of resurgence in this fight. And I think from the perspective of healthcare, that's kind of been what we've been doing, in a sense of kind of looking internally and reflecting on our role in perpetuating those systems and what we can do moving forward. So I kind of wanted to even touch on that first question that Orlando had asked, talking about trauma-informed care, but more so directly, what is the role of physicians in this space? I know that at times we come off very prescriptive, and we've seen a lot of this manifestation through the COVID-19 outcomes, and how we've seen the disparities on this national scale. But how can we as physicians and even future physicians continue to contribute to this fight on a granular level? Because when it comes to housing, when it comes to economic development, when it comes to education, all these things are tied into the greater health of the community. So I'm just kind of curious to know some of your thoughts and perspectives on that.
Any of the panelists want to tackle that? First off, shout out to Sid, this young Black man in med school at Wayne State. We see you, young Black man. We love to see it. You hear me? Go Sid. But I want to open it up to any of the panelists. It's a great question, and it's something that we're tackling right now as we talk about vaccines that will be made available, and the distrust that a lot of folks of color, particularly Black folks, have because of disparate care in the medical field. So anybody in that space or anybody have advice?
Can I have a?
Yeah, go ahead, Landis.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because that's super important. My sister has had many struggles with her health. She's 30 and has spent all of her 20s basically in and out of the hospital and from doctor appointments to doctor appointments. And the medical bias against Black women is so real, and this is borne out in many of the data that you can check out in terms of, what happens during birth, in terms of death rates, etc. And so it's important that we tackle this bias in the medical field, and that we have more people that look like us and represent us in the medical field, because that bias has real life consequences. And I've seen it with my own eyes, unfortunately. And it's as easy as, not taking the pain of Black women seriously. Like, I've seen doctors all the time pretend like my sister is acting, like when she's in serious pain. Or it's like raising suspicions about like, oh, why do you need this medicine? And like the extra scrutiny they get. So tackling that bias and being a voice for that bias amongst your colleagues is very important, and is a good step that you can take along with pursuing a medical degree. So thank you.
Anybody else want to speak to that? Nakia.
I'm going to try. Thank you for that question, Cedric. I think, a part of what brought people out to the streets was just the disproportionate way in which COVID-19 claimed Black life, right? And the way that people there's like 27 million, people should look it up for themselves. I'm not sure on that number. I think it's 27 million people in this country without healthcare, right? And so I think the role of healthcare professionals. I know you asked about doctors, but healthcare professionals, what we've seen is, healthcare professionals being really engaged in fights, one, not only for their own like value and their right to be able to not have their lives be thrown completely at risk, particularly Black and brown healthcare professionals, particularly like those who are lower paid, who have just been thrown into this pandemic and not given enough resources that they need. And we know, we have all these, there's a disproportionate amount of like Black and brown people who work in the healthcare field, who work in hospitals, who do hospice care, who themselves don't have healthcare. And so they come home to our communities and they've been exposed to this disease and they still have to care for their kids. And so what we see in terms of like nurses trying to strike, what we see in terms of like CNAs or, sorry, I know people don't like the word, in environmental services people really being engaged in fights around like being able to be safe is one thing. The other thing I think that's really important for healthcare professionals is being able to be honest about the need for universal healthcare in this country. And like, yes, there is something on an individual level that people can do, but also really looking at how to call for the health and safety and like the basic right to live, right, of like poor people and Black and brown people in this country. And so, but it's a thing that unfortunately just isn't done enough, just isn't done as much, where we don't see physicians or we don't see medical directors coming out and saying, actually, the system that we have now for healthcare leaves too many of our people without options. And what we're seeing right now in terms of the amount of people dying from COVID-19 is actually not shocking with the system that we have. Unfortunately, the system that we have does nothing to support the healthcare needs of Black and brown and poor people in this country. And so really looking at ways to speak out more about that. So anyway, I'm gonna shorten it. Two things. One, support the like fights of the workers in the healthcare field, because ultimately that what they're fighting for is better things for their patients. And then two, being able to be honest about what it is that it would actually take to have people healthy.
Thank you.
Can I answer this from the mental health side?
Sure, go ahead, Izzy.
All right. So to mental health professionals, I would say a big thing I would emphasize is, like Landis was talking about in the beginning, believing your patients about their pain. And when you're being skeptical of your patients about their pain, asking yourself, like, what gain does my patient have in faking this pain right now? What gain do they get out of that? But I think especially when you're talking to marginalized folks, people of color and Black people especially, recognizing that racism is traumatizing and that the mere act of recounting some of the racist things that you've gone through throughout your life can be incredibly stressful. Just, yeah, recognizing that this stuff really, really affects your life. And also recognizing that for people of color, healing, the idea of reaching a healed state is not really realistic, because unfortunately for people of color, the danger and threats in our lives are always present. It's not like when we think of treating people from some sort of trauma or abuse, the first step that we think of is removing the danger from their lives. But for people of color in this country, that is not possible. Yeah.
Thank you, Izzy. I want to go to another question from the audience, in particular to our panelists. Again, looking at young adults, right? What are some of the strategies that you can share with us in building relationship with elders? Navigating tension, discomfort, feeling the need to over parent, or hey, you need to do it this way? And how did you find that groove of creating a place of respect and also still being your youthful self? Man, did you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll I'll try to tackle this. This is very hard. Yeah.
My bad, man. I didn't mean to make it hard.
No, that question. I'm glad that question was asked, because everyone sees the tension because it exists, and there's just such a big disconnect between the lived experiences of young people currently and what some of our elders, had experienced. In a lot of ways, it's very similar, but in some ways, it's different. My dad was like, my dad was 73. He's deceased now, but he was a boomer, and so I had to deal with this most of my life. And I think, man, this is hard, but I think where it can come from is just knowing that we still have to be our authentic selves, right? So we still have to push for things that we want, but at the same time, at least in rhetoric, when we're talking to people, we have to sometimes explain things and like just try to bring them to where we're at, right? So, I've had conversations with my grandma and other folks around defunding the police, and then always at onset when you say that, it raises a lot of people's guards, right? So you have to go through all the whole thing of like, well, actually how you keep communities safe is by investing in like community centers and healthcare, and wouldn't the money be better spent with mental health workers and all these things? Because you have to, sometimes our positions will not be where their default mind is. And so you have to kind of like walk them there and not compromise yourself, but at least meet them where they're at and slowly over time bring them to where you're at. In terms of community leaders, man, it's such a hard question. I might give that to someone else, but that's at least how I've approached it in my own life. I hope that was somewhat satisfying.
Anybody else want to tackle it? I think I can help.
Yeah.
Too, as a
little
person.
bit about it. Uh-oh, I can't hear.
Did I hear Nieja try to go ahead? Nieja, go ahead, and then we'll.
No, I think it's Nakia, and then I can go after.
Okay, go ahead, Nakia. No, you go ahead, Nieja, and Nakia go after you.
Okay. So the one thing that I would like to say, and it's not directly answering your question, it's definitely a lifelong battle. So when we first started this idea about creating internet in small parts of the neighborhood, I think the first reaction was just kind of like internet is a luxury, and that was across the board, but a lot of it was from some older members in the community. But and then like a few years later, you have something like a pandemic happen, and the only way to connect with people is through the internet. And then my phone went crazy in March. My phone went crazy with how many people were trying to get people with internet right away, because in the beginning, like, people were they just couldn't see the connection right away of how much internet is infused with people's day-to-day life. And I'm sure that with a lot of other pieces of it is how the intersectionality of all of this starts. And so a lot of it is like Landis saying, it's like conversation and conversation and conversation, and some of it might be even asking questions, just being able to let people come to their own conclusion, right? So like you can rephrase whatever they're telling you, rephrase it, and ask them in the same way that they're asking you, is this important? How does this affect your life? And so on. And so definitely making sure that two people that are a little bit older on this call, on this conversation, just making sure you step back and listen to the younger people that are speaking, and the younger people in your life that are trying to organize with you. But yeah, it's a very big question.
Nakia, you had a comment after.
Yeah. I really enjoy this question because I'm one of those people that was raised by grandparents and great grandparents, right? And so obviously you just want to show a lot of respect, but you always have to look at the situation and figure out, like, is this a life or death matter? And so for me, people might have seen like the video of like DPD running over one of our protests this summer, or even like the murder of Hakeem Littleton. And so when we look at, so one, like, again, I don't believe that everybody's a leader because they said so, or because the mayor said that they are. That doesn't make you a leader in my eyes. But I do have a lot of respect for my elders, but you kind of got to look at what it is that they're actually saying. So if someone is telling you that like somebody deserved to die, or if someone is telling you, protesters deserve to get ran over, or kind of those life-threatening things, I think that there's a way to publicly address it and to call it out. You know, I wrote an open letter to City Council President Brenda Jones, and in the letter, I called her ma'am, I called her Miss Jones, and all those things. But at the end of the day, you still have to call them out, because what we're fighting for and what we're envisioning is a world that we have to live in, right? And so the misunderstandings, or just the actual tangible disagreements of a generation, kind of can't be the thing that like upends or stops our progress. And so just looking at ways to be, so one, like, people who are like just against you have to call them out and engage in thoughtful disagreements that move forward. But then there's the other question of like, I really don't like engaging. People ask me this all summer. I'm 23 years old. There are elders, there are people in this city who have been like on our side since they were our ages, and who have never left the right side of history. And so for me, you kind of focus on those people, because they gravitate towards us, they give us praise, they come out in our defense. There's people like Marion Kramer, there's people like Maureen I think there's this video of Fannie Lou Hamer, and they're asking her about student movements. And she's like, well, the young people are tired. She's like, they're tired. And what they're doing is standing up and fighting against the press. And so Fannie Lou Hamer was one of those elders who was on the right side of history and never left it. And so I think you really lean heavily on them, and you really uplift them, and you can't it's a difficult thing generationally. And it quite frankly, sometimes it hurts my feelings. Like, Brenda Jones hurt my feelings, like saying the things that she said. But at the end of the day, what I want and what I envision is a world where people can live freely, and is a world where people have access to, like, a good quality of life. And so it has to be like discussed openly.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
And
Go ahead, Rambo.
Yeah, I just want to bring forward, thank you for those comments. I want to bring forward another question from the chat before we go to Brian. We see your hand raised. Pat Butler asked for one of the panelists, or more than one, to define community.
Well, let me just call on somebody. Gabriella, can you jump in on that one? Are you still with us? What does community mean, Gabriella? Are you still with us?
Hi folks,
Oh.
still here. So I think that we all have our own definitions of what community is. When I talk about community, I often go about it through the sense of, it's a group of people who align on values, who align on needs, and we can be a part of many different communities. So I am a part of the immigrant community, I am part of the Southwest community, I'm a part of the LGBTQ community, and each of these communities have different needs, desires, they do different things. You can be a part of the soccer community, all those things. So it's really important to know. It's a good question. It's important to know what community is, because it's important to know who your people are, and what it is that you all like, don't like, and need. So that's a very simple, I think, answer to your question.
Any of the other panelists want to tackle community? Okay.
Hey, Land, I just want to add something to that real quick.
Yeah.
Sometimes we tend to, when we say community, we tend to act like we mean neighborhoods, and they're not the same. Neighborhood and community, we need to make those distinctions. And just want to throw that out there. And so sometimes when we say community, it could be the larger Detroit, and we know Detroit particular. When we say, well, what neighborhood you from, what hood, not what community you from. Like, we have to know the lingo and how we engage. That's part of the work, and also helps us to understand the landscape and things.
Of course, use of with the distinction. We're going to go to Brian Silverstein, who's had his hand up. Unmute yourself, Brian, and go ahead with your comment or question.
Thanks, everybody. So I got one of each, actually. I just wanted to make a comment to frame my question, which is that it's really interesting to be talking about housing and water this year in particular, because in the fight for affordable housing, every year we always hear the same shit from the city, which is that there's no money in the budget to actually do real affordable housing. There's never any money for water. But now we know exactly where to get that money. DPD's got $330 million that they just use to beat, murder, and evict people. So, maybe we can find a way to take some of that cash they got in their tanks and in their bullets and in their body armor and put it into houses, put it to keep people in their houses, into creating some of that equitable development that we keep referencing. And that connects up to my question, which is that I've heard equitable development tossed around, but we haven't actually defined what that means, what that looks like for Detroit, and how we can make that real. How do we actually keep people in Detroit, in their homes, in their communities, and give them some autonomy over the places they live? What does that look like for real in Detroit?
Who wants to take that on? And while the panelists figure out what they're going to say, Brian, Maggie just put on the PowerPoint, an equitable development process that many of the task forces and kitchen cabinets made up of the building engine of community development process have come up with. But Landis, we'll punt to you.
Yeah, this is a great question, especially around guaranteeing housing and water. And the housing one particularly is infuriating because, there's this quasi-public entity that is the largest property owner in the entire city, the land bank, and they're currently sitting on 50,000 vacant houses and so many vacant lots. I mean, if any place in this country could do a housing guarantee, it should be the city of Detroit, despite not even needing to take money from other places. And so it's just it's capitalistic greed of why it's not being done. It's the mayor being owned and bought by many of these developers. And so what an equitable development in equitable Detroit looks like is people who've been here their whole lives and the average citizen, material conditions improving as the city improves, people staying in their houses, people having more money, people having the ability to live their lives, people getting access to health care. These are all the metrics we should be improving, and instead of our metric being, oh hey, a new yoga shop just opened up in the divested area of town. And so this is what we need to look to do, and we can do this. Like I said, we have so much. The land bank has so much land, guys. If anyone could have a housing guarantee, it could be our city. And the money is there. The money is there. And if it's not there, there's people with it. There's Gilbert, there's Illich, there's GM, there's people with it. And we just have to organize and demand that our officials do this.
Any of the other panelists Landis, I see a follow-up in the chat for you that's asking for clarification on what is a housing guarantee. What does that mean? What do you mean when you say housing guarantee?
Yeah, so this is basically seeing housing as a right and committing to end something such as homelessness or stopping foreclosures and evictions and making sure that all your citizens have housing. In terms of homelessness, it costs the taxpayers more money to deal with the issues resulting from homelessness, such as hospital visits and police incidences than it does to actually house homeless people. Many cities have done this. Many cities have given homeless people apartments and units, and they've actually seen improvements in them getting off of drugs, improvements in their mental health. The first step is usually housing people before the other steps come in. And so that's all housing guarantee is just making sure that everyone has a house, and we recognize that people having a home to go to is a basic human right, and we can do that in this city.
Yeah. Is my friend, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Yeah, and I don't have a direct answer, Brian, but I just know that there's so many things that go into why housing and water are still up for a conversation in Detroit. I mean, we think about how many people aren't able to afford to buy a house in Detroit right now. People aren't able to afford insurance in the city right now. People aren't able to, it goes back to money. It goes back to people buying up property, sitting on it for many years, thinking that they're gonna flip it. People selling houses that they got for $20,000 for $80,000 because in other neighborhoods, that's amazing. That's a steal. That's a snatch. Meanwhile, there's people in these communities that aren't able to buy their childhood home because there's so many obstacles in even understanding this process. It's not just, oh, if you save $20 from every paycheck, you're going to be able to buy a house one day, because that's not even realistic, especially when people are getting paid minimum wage. And so $8, $10, to really say that the only key is just for people to save better, to not buy an iPhone, to not do all these things, doesn't really put a drop in the bucket to all the other challenges that Detroiters face in the city. If I wanted to put insurance on my car right now, I would literally have to pay like about $600 for like no fault, like the basic low minimum BS, whatever. And so many people right now, they're like, should I pay insurance or should I just pay $120 for the ticket and hop onto Zoom court, instead, and face whatever consequences, from there, and so many people, there's so many lines to be connected with housing and with water in the city. And so, yeah, it's just a constant battle.
Yeah, it's loaded. I want to see if my good friend, Sam Butler from Doing Development Differently in Detroit is in the chat or in the room, because Sam has a keen perspective on equitable development. Sam Butler, are you here somewhere? Sam Butler, are you still with us? I know I'm calling you out, but that's what I like to do. I like to call people out. You here, Sam? Is Sam here?
Lando calls me out all the time.
I do. I call you. I call Yusuf about all the time. Well, it's giving, what he dishes out, because Yusuf loves to call everybody else out. So somebody got to call him out. So there's some more. I think Phyllis Edwards, if we can't get Sam on. Phyllis Edwards from Bridging Communities had her hand up. Phyllis, we want to get to your question. Are you with us, Phyllis?
I'm with you. Good afternoon. Hey, first of all, let me just say, I am encouraged as a senior citizen. People don't like to acknowledge where they are in their life, but I always say if living is your priority, then aging is your destiny. So we all pray to get there, right? So I'm encouraged by the panelists today. I certainly thank you for your continued efforts in the struggle for social justice in this country. It is something that has been going on for a while. And we talked about I had so many questions, as you saw my hand go up and down, and so many comments as we move through this conversation, especially around health disparities, especially among young women of color, but people of color, period. And it doesn't end, because as a person who works primarily with senior citizens, I see daily the disparity in healthcare that they receive, and the dismissal that the medical profession, how they so effectively dismiss their ailments and over medicate them in so many ways without really checking on the medication that they're receiving or reading the historical reports or gathering correct information. But they're over medicated, and a lot of their troubles is just that, the medication, right? We're in someone said a capitalistic society that's built on the pharmaceutical companies. And so, like I said, I am encouraged. I ask us to look at these things from an intergenerational lens. Certainly, things change, and sometimes people don't change with them. But all of us who are people of color has been in the struggle one way or another. Um, and certainly we haven't always gotten it right, but the struggle continues and every generation leaves its footprint. And I am just excited about the footprints that this generation is leaving. And so, it's going to take all of us to really change the systems that perpetuate the inadequacies and the injustices to people in this country. I was just talking to a friend of mine out west that lives on a reservation, and now all of a sudden, the government has decided they can have running water and electricity when they put them in no barren lands in the first place, knowing that they weren't that good to be there. They weren't adequate in the first place. But I just think about Maya Angelou and that her poem that we're more alike than not alike. All of us want the basic things that to help us to live and thrive and be safe in our communities. And so we are not alone here in the city of Detroit. This struggle goes on and on and on. And as I come tomorrow to talk about some of the policies that are affecting us that have been implemented, certainly one of those is water, right? But we had a panoramic view of the inequality in water from Flint, and we failed to even capitalize on that. So I commend the panel. I'm here if you need me as one of your seniors, who I hope has been on the right side of justice of this struggle as we move forward. But I think it takes all of us.
I'm not gonna do it.
What'd you say?
I said I had a joke there, but I'm not going to do it. I decided.
Oh, go ahead. You and I, if you say something, I'm going to bounce off of you. So, I'm not weak skinned at all. Go ahead.
Oh, nothing. I'm going to leave you alone. Thank you.
All right.
I got some. I love your background. I don't even do golf, but your background made me want to do golf.
Hey, come on. You know what? That's one of the places you can go to get away from everything and just really gather your thoughts and think. And one of the things about golf, it's always in nature and it's always out in a beautiful space.
So that's a good place that we can take some young people and some old people and get them together.
They have, absolutely. And they have a midnight golf run by Renee Fluker that takes young people and do just that and support them through scholarships. Absolutely.
Awesome. Hey, Maggie, you've been monitoring the chat, you and Lauren. I want to bring you both in to just sort of highlight some of the comments and questions that are going in the chat. I hear the chat is fire, but it's hard to follow. So Lauren and Maggie, I want to put to you guys.
I got you.
And then also we have Laura Hand. Sorry, Brian has his hand up after you guys read something.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So going back to the top, we have a question from Kristen S. She asks, what is the role for people outside the community proper in these fights? I know we just had a conversation about community meaning different things, but if so, what is the best way to do so?
I think this is a good question, Lauren, because all summer long we heard from Chief Craig this rhetoric and narrative around outsiders coming into our community to protest and fight for justice in the wake of George Floyd, and many critiques of that narrative. But I want to allow the panelists to respond. Landis, Izzy, Muhammad, Gabriella, Niesia, any of you, what's the role of outsiders? What's the role of our neighbors who want to do good work in the city, who want to be accomplices in this work?
I don't have a complete answer yet. I don't have a whole answer, but one thing is leveraging resources. So just understanding that depending on who you are and where you're from, you might come with, the city might be paying attention to you a little bit different, coming in from outside. Like I think Gabby was saying in the beginning, there's people coming from other neighborhoods that are, trying to come to Detroit, and sometimes city government, city officials, they listen to those people first. And so being able to leverage opportunity, money, to be frank, those resources that you have to put towards a fight with people from the neighborhood. And so making sure that you're accountable. And I think that's something that's said in the chat too, being accountable to the people in the area that you're living.
Yeah, anybody else?
Yeah, I think this is always an interesting question. And when we look to history, when we look to like the freedom riders, that took people from other communities standing beside the people in those communities who were building fights. When we look at slavery, like it actually took kind of a concerted effort across like geographical boundaries. And so the question of outside agitators is as old as day. Whenever there's social movements, the powers that be use that line to try to divide people and to try to really bust up and break movements, and to say like, well, your situation where you are is just so uniquely different that other people shouldn't even be speaking on your city. And unfortunately, in some places we see it works. We see like protest leaders or pastors or whoever standing up and saying like, it's different in our city and we don't want nothing to do with Atlanta, or we don't want nothing to do with Minneapolis and Minnesota. And it's just a wrong theory. In order to like create the kind of change we need, what it takes is standing next to each other and supporting each other's fights. And so you have to welcome the support. If Detroit could make a fight for housing and water and public education all by ourselves, just fighting alone, we would have won that by now. Because the people of Detroit have been fighting for our dignity and for our right to live our whole lives, right? But what it takes is a national movement, which is something that we're in now. And we can even look at like when we can look at Malice Green. The people who killed Malice Green were convicted because it was off the strength of the Rodney King. Like when we look at different victories that we've won, it's taken being able to be connected and unified with people in other places, and people being able to come to where injustice is at. Martin Luther King is a great example of that. He went wherever it was necessary to go.
I think that Yusuf wanted to call on Brian. Byron, I'm sorry, or Brian in the chat.
It's Brian.
Brian, sorry.
Yeah, you're okay. Well, that's hard to follow up, Nakia. So I was switching up a little bit. So just to introduce myself, my name is Brian Cook. I'm actually a licensed architect, and I'm the president-elect of NOMA, which is National Organization of Minority Architects. So when we talk about housing, when we talk about community connections, I really just want to lend my organization and my team and my services to any panelists and any young people out here, because once I started getting involved in understanding what community development was, it's literally the seeds that start architecture. And I think there's a disconnect in the terminology that is used for development in housing and infrastructure, right? And these are the terms that I hear every day. Right. So how can, and to Nakia's point, how can we connect? And that's really what I get excited about. I'm excited about young people being excited about what they're doing, because I get energized from the young people. We've done a free architecture camp the last 6 years for high school and middle school students. And I'd love to continue to expand that program to not only include young people, but people of all ages, so that everybody has the weaponry, so to speak, when development speak is being spoken, and how opportunities can be gained. like Naisha was saying, maybe there is a way to get a little bit, just take that little bit of money. There's a lot of different models, but again, you got to have people that experience to help you with that, to showcase a presentation or provide you insight on, how this is structured. And honestly, sometimes it's just, not knowing the process, you bring up a lot of questions of like, oh, I haven't thought about it that way. So, I'd love to continue to connect with all of you about any piece of what you're doing, because the young people that I run into that are in architecture, that want to get into architecture, they're going into urban design, they're going into landscape design. These are things that, can definitely help along that process. And I'd love to arm anyone with, any amount of knowledge that I can give out, because the reality is there's just not enough of us. There's literally 2,000 Black architects in the entire country out of 150,000. So, there's a nice number here in Detroit, but it's still, we're not a huge number. So we have to arm the people around us in our community with the knowledge that we have, so that, you can speak, to power, essentially, by the way they speak. And I've seen on both ends on how this development works. And it's quite ridiculous.
There's an opportunity for translation and language in order to be able to play the game. I really want to ask Mohammed. He's our panelist from Cass Tech. He's our star from Castingle High School, and he's the president of the Muslim Student Association. Mohammed, what kinds of conversation does the association and even your colleagues, your student peers outside the association have around the built environment, and what your neighborhoods look like, and how are you guys thinking about getting involved if you all are having those conversations? Mohammed, you still with us? Did we lose Mohammed? Gosh darn it, I really wanted to hear from our Cass Tech star. Okay, I'll open up that same question to the panelists, especially those who are, working in community development. Language is a real thing, and it can also serve as an offensive barrier if there isn't translation, right? And so we don't believe in dumbing anything down. We believe in translating language, but in terms of being able to, play in some of these fields and not get left behind by language, how are you having conversations about the built environment in your areas? So Izzy, I'll go ahead and punt to you.
All right. So just discussing how I translate my ideas to those in my community. I think that's a great question. I think that anyone who does any sort of hosting, facilitation work, if in your work you're doing some sort of education to other people, you should be prepared to be able to say your idea and then say it again in maybe some simpler terms. Maybe you can map out what your idea is, go over what this looks like, but then be prepared for someone who maybe didn't get that the first time to be like, can you summarize please? And just have a few points, main points that you can just state right there. I think that, I've definitely picked up on doing this I have a lot of facilitation experience with Roundtable, and definitely the past few years, something that I picked up doing this facilitating is just saying something and then re-saying it without even thinking about it. I'll say racism means this to me, and then I will say it one more time in, I don't want to say simpler terms, but in different terms, just for those who may not have gotten it across the first time. Yeah. I think it means being prepared for questions and being prepared to reiterate whatever point you may have several times over until the person trying to hear you really hears it.
Yeah, Brian, if I can get at this, and we'll get to I think we see some more hands and stuff in the chat. When I was at Eastside Community Network, we facilitated a lot of community-driven processes, whether it was planning, whether it was development, even economic development processes, in partnership and lockstep with residents. All of the projects plans are and still are, resident driven. And so you have organizations or professionals with a technical expertise, and then you have residents who are perfect. Can you hear me? Did I lose you guys? And
No,
then you
we can hear you.
okay. And then you have residents who are also professionals in whatever world they live in, as well as just residents. And so we took what the Community Development Advocates of Detroit did in creating this planning tool and framework, and we flushed it out after we went through it a few times to create a neighborhood engagement framework that was centered around three main tenets, and that was education, translation, and facilitation. Recognizing that language can be both beautiful and it could be offensive. And so we don't believe in dumbing anything down, but we believe in making sure that language is accessible and translating language, and making sure that that educational process is fluid, meaning me as the professional technical expert isn't the only one that's qualified to be doing the educating, right? Miss Powell in Chandler Park or in Ravendale has just as much knowledge, if not more knowledge and lived experience than me, and should be educating me in her language. And I need to make sure that I'm understanding and knowing her language. And it's the same thing on both ends. And so so that framework sort of provided ECN residents and residents within the Lower East Side Action Plan Planning District to hold up that experience against anybody coming in to do any kind of community development work, right? And so if there was anybody who came in, let's say, I don't know, the Villages area, and ECN did a lot of work in translating and a lot of, back and forth in the Villages area and, in resident driven planning. You come over there now and you start speaking jargon and trying to talk over everybody's head, they're gonna run you out of there. You're gonna be traumatized, and then you're gonna need the trauma-informed care for real. And so I think that we have to be mindful and fluid in who we think the educators are. Number one, the educators are all of us. We have to be mindful and fluid about making sure that our language is translated. And just like this meeting, we got to make sure that it's well facilitated. And a lot of times we have to facilitate tension, and that's okay. That's the other thing about trauma-informed community development. We got to make room for trauma to speak and not be mad or feel uncomfortable when trauma comes out. So I just wanted to co-sign. I just wanted to add that little nugget. I know I'm supposed to be facilitating. I wanted to add that little nugget because Brian, I think it was a great question. We are going to go to, I want to say her name correctly, Jihan, who has her hand up. Jihan.
Awesome. Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you. We kind of went over this topic, but when you guys were discussing outsiders coming into Detroit to kind of do work, I think I'm from one of the only cities, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, that's not neighboring Detroit. I mean, we share streets. So I was born and raised in the Hamtramck area, and there are streets in Hamtramck and in Detroit where it'll be half of it's Hamtramck, half of it's Detroit. They literally have different trash cans and different trash cycles. So when people usually discuss the conversation of outsiders coming in, they think of the more broader Metro Detroit, suburban affluent sides that come in and work with people. I guess my question for the panelists is, what are your thoughts, or how have you guys been able to navigate working with Hamtramck folks? Because Hamtramck folks have both community and neighborhood, in the same area, because I live in Hamtramck, but my neighborhood is also Bonglatown. It's also 6 Mile. It's also 7 Mile. These are places that are both my neighborhood and my community in more than one way. And I've always kind of been stuck in the middle of am I really a part of this, city, or does the Hamtramck lifestyle completely differ from the Detroit one? And so I think that's a question for the panelists. If you guys are not familiar with the Hamtramck, that's okay. But that was the question I had when we were discussing outsiders.
I love it. I think it's a great question. Anybody want to hop on that? Hamtramck. I feel like Hamtramck is Detroit, as in Highland Park. But anybody working specifically in those areas that want to answer? Panelists.
I was gonna say I live in a bordering street, so half of my street is Detroit and the other half is Hamtramck. I fall on the Detroit side, but as soon as I leave my block, I enter Hamtramck. But to be honest, I think like Orlando said, I would consider it to be part of Detroit, because the communities that gather in Hamtramck are pretty similar to the Detroit areas. So I think, like you mentioned, we've always considered our neighborhoods, 6 Mile, Town, and Hamtramck to be connected. So personally, from living in Detroit, right next to Hamtramck, I would say similar. I think Hamtramck has always been a part of Detroit. I think it is literally inside of Detroit. So that would make sense to me.
So Jihan, can I follow up with this question? And Muhammad, I want to make sure that you respond. Jihan,
Yes.
do you, as a person from Hamtramck, I just want to make sure that we get the question answered. Do you feel like residents in Hamtramck don't feel a part of the fabric of Detroit and could technically be considered or feel like they are outsiders, but are interested in advancing some of the movements in Detroit? Is that what you're getting at?
No, I think it's because it's like a nuanced topic, because if you think of Hamtramck, people think one of two routes. They think of the historical Polish, Ukrainian Hamtramck, again, first generation immigrants, but they're white immigrants. And then you think of the brown immigrants, but not universal brown. It's the mostly Desi Arab brown immigrants. When most people think about Hamtramck, they typically don't think of Black Hamtramckans, even though even though Black Hamtramckans exist. It's the confusion between people thinking their anti-Blackness comes out when they discuss, oh, I'm from Hamtramck versus I'm not from Detroit. Our school systems are different. Granted, I understand we're a much smaller city, so us being able to navigate our public school system is a little bit different, but we do face some of the same issues, like charters completely being in our cities. But one of the bigger issues I found is, especially when we were running campaigns, is that Hamtramck and Detroit do share state level and Congress level representatives. And there's a world of difference from what I've seen in the way people perceive who their state reps or their, state senators should be based on whether they've lived in Hamtramck in their brown or white community versus living in Detroit. Maybe that could have been a brown or Black community. Like, we just had a proposal on our ballot back in November, for example, to open up our city charter to discuss the fire department and the police department as entities that should be ran by our city council, right? It overwhelmingly got voted down no, because people were like, that's going to combine both of those forces. We need the police. We don't want to get rid of them. We need the fire department. We don't want to get rid of them. And no one was saying get rid of them. It was just literally giving voice, power to the people. And instead it became kind of like this thing of like, no, those have to stay separate. The police chief is doing a fantastic job. Like, we do not need, we need the police force. And it's interesting things like that. Whereas, literally down the street, there's this amazing campaign to discuss defunding Detroit police, because people understand the actual systematic oppressions that come with police. But I think the nuance comes in to brown people that want to align themselves with whiteness. They understand the concept of, we need the police because they're enforcing the rules. Okay, what are the rules? And no one wants to have that discussion. So I think that's why I asked that question, because I've noticed in my work, and I don't mean to ramble, people kind of see you a little bit differently if you're doing community organizing work, if you're from Hamtramck, because they think you're kind of like a parachuter, or you're not really from the city, or you have a different lived experience.
Wow. It's layered, you know what I mean? Any of the panelists want to?
I can briefly just make a comment to that. So thanks for the question and for the conversation. I don't know if I know the exact answer, but what I'm feeling the tension is, back to your original question of like, what can folks do that are outside of the city? I think you are starting to kind of do that, but I think that is the thing to do intentionally, is understand the historical context, is understand why it is that Hamtramck is no longer a part of Detroit, and Highland Park is no longer a part of Detroit, to understand why it is that folks have these feelings. And I would just like to say that your lived experience is really valuable to the organizing world and to this work, because as we have shared today, those lived experiences are incredibly important, and it is what holds the answers to our questions, to our needs. So I would just continue to to dig deeper into the history. I would continue to ask those really critical questions of like, what is my place in this work? I know that I'm always constantly asking myself that, and then realizing that you do have a place. We all do have a role to play, but very much starting with the what do I not know? What do I need to know? What can I continue to learn? And then from what I'm learning, what is my role in all of this work, and understanding that, yeah, there is a lot of work already being done, a lot of organizing being done, but we need the bridges. We need the folks from Hamtramck, Borderline, Detroit, who are able to speak to the different communities in those neighborhoods in order to have these hard discussions. And I think once you start there, you'll start to realize the work that we have to do. So we, like, Hamtramck feels this way because of this, so we have to actually do this kind of civic education, or these kind of political education conversations, or historical conversations. And I'm sure they're all going to be related to class and race. So I think you're asking the right questions. I think it's just about diving more into those conversations and learnings.
I just want to add something real quick to this. Fundamentally, we just need people to care. Like, you don't have to be from poverty to come in and help somebody. You have to be able to connect with someone. Are there differences? Are there dynamics that's there? Like, we can't not run from those things. And that's what we have to unpack: the dynamics of immigration versus the dynamics of someone living across the street who's Black. And this is where we help people see what anti-Blackness is. But fundamentally, we cannot use the language of our oppressors. So, like, outsiders, that is the oppressor's language being able to be imposed on us. And the reality, Duggan, he's an outsider. The reality, Hollywood Craig, he's an outsider. And most of the people that work up under him are outsiders. And but it doesn't negate within us. Are there frameworks? Again, like, if somebody come in my neighborhood, of course I'm like looking at, what the hell, where you been at? Who are you, right? And that's all about how you come into somebody's neighborhood. I mean, it's a basic practice. You come into my house, just act like you just got there, or you come in with respect. If you show somebody respect, then they're gonna show respect backwards. But also knowing, again, there's moments where it's connected and there's moments where it's not connected, but it's building authentic relationships.
Taylor Barrow has a question about ego and organizing. Taylor, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, yes. So hi, everyone. I'm Taylor. I'm also a medical student at Wayne State with SED. And we
What up to all the Black men students?
Oh, we should be studying right now. Oh, thank you. So we are trying to, well, okay, so I'll just explain. I was a social worker prior to coming to med school, and we are doing this program called Healing Between the Lines, where we're really trying to reframe the way we have expertise in medical education, because we're taught, specifically Seth and I have firsthand experience, we're taught by the same identity over and over again in terms of, like, these are the experts in how health should be handled. And so we're trying to create this curriculum where we're bringing in community activists to teach their expertise alongside other people in the medical field. And some of the things that we're sort of grappling with as we're building this curriculum for medical students is ego and organizing. So it's really difficult because I feel like we spoke to this a little bit earlier. Society sort of touts a certain sort of intelligence. And unfortunately, when that happens, not all experiences are validated. And I think that is really representative in healthcare. And it's something that Sed was talking about before. And so to all of our veteran organizers and folks who've been doing this for a while, what are some of the tactics that you use to raise up certain voices and then have others take a step back? And then what does it look like to do that in situations where, like when you're in academia? And just some advice on how to kind of dismantle leadership, right? The expertise in our community would be great.
I'm calling out Yusuf Shakur on that one because we had a conversation earlier this year about egos and organizing in the city of Detroit.
Good question, man. I think fundamentally, man, it just comes down to, are we going to continue to come at the table with like-minded people versus like-value folks? Like-minded people it's about who we like and who we, Doug, Nakia mentioned earlier, based upon who Duggan likes tends to get to the forefront. Also, let's be honest with ourselves. It's the bag. We talk about the people in the street, they chasing the bag. It's casting this nonprofit, they chasing the bag and they chasing their egos. And so we have to get very authentic with ourselves. And that's what, knowing our history. I mean, the people that we admire the most, they wasn't chasing the bag. They died broke. They died putting their families on the line. So if we're gonna talk about them, we also have to emulate them. We have to put the people before ourselves. But to do that, that's what Nakia also mentioned. Like, we have to identify what is a leader. Because I'm loudmouth and I'm wearing my hat silly. Does that make me a leader? Because you see me on Fox 2 News with my good friend Orlando, and he drilling me. Does that make me a leader? No, that don't make me. That may make me a spokesperson. That may make me a person with a big ass mouth, but that don't make me a leader. And we have to begin creating the criteria of what leadership is. How do we engage in the community? But also, again, if we're arguing around our values of how we're going to do it, then that tells you the person is about themselves. Because this is what mom and daddy always told you. If you listen to a fool enough, they'll tell you how they operate. They'll tell you who they is. And a lot of these guys, when they keep saying me, myself, and I repeat, when they keep saying me, myself, and you need to be looking for the exit. You need to be getting off from that table, or someone like said recently, if someone says, we better than our ancestors, or we ain't our ancestors, you need to be trying to get the hell away from them, because we are our ancestors. We are connected to each other. And the fact that how great I may be as an individual, I'm greater because of us. I cannot be, I'm not greater than the whole.
And just to add to it, I think, the ego comes when we have unchecked internalization of, white supremacy, when we care about so much around this rugged individualism that is a tenet of white supremacy, when we continue to state me, myself, and I, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, there is no room for ego in these movements. So Yusuf, thank you. I think there's a comment that I want to read that speaks to this. And
Could I address that one actually?
Yep.
Black woman here.
Say it.
No, I think this is a really interesting question, because I'm gonna be frank. I as a Black woman in an organizing space, right? They're particularly, like, as a young Black woman born out of poverty, there is a tendency of, like, I'm just call it what it is, like grown men to assert themselves or assert their opinions or their physicality, like over Black women in organizing spaces. And they use that as a means to kind of like give them more authority, because they, are willing to like stand somewhere and scream or use foul language, or because they're just physically, like, they can overpower you, right? And it's always really interesting. So I'm gonna say something like, from the position of like a Black woman addressing ego, one is you just can't concede. You can't concede to the erasure of your own existence and the erasure of your own voice. And that is, it is why, like, Chief Craig can say whatever he wants about me. I'm Nakia Renee Wallace. I'm a Detroiter. I'm in the front. And you're going to know that, right? Because you cannot, in good faith, participate in your voice and your experience being erased. And so in dealing with egos, you just can't be afraid to call them out. And they could be, look, Yusuf Shakur, let me tell y'all how much I love Yusuf. I love Yusuf Shakur. But if he ever tried me, I would let him know. I would let him know. And so I think there's a tendency, particularly like I see it, it's not an easy thing to do. I see it in times where somebody says something that is just wrong or not quite right or offensive or counter to productive. But, he's a good, or oh, he's a, or oh, he's, whatever. No, actually, we got to check them, because that's what radical love looks like. Like, we have to love each other enough to put each other in our places, but also we want to win. Like, we want to win, and it matters how we win, and it matters what we do and how we relate to each other. And so, I don't know. I just wanted to say that because the question came from a Black woman, and I just wanted to address it from the standpoint of another Black woman.
Thank
Don't
you.
ever participate in your own erasure. Don't ever participate in your own erasure. Don't ever participate in your own erasure. Period.
Ooh. Can you teach at the medical school, please? Because this.
She said, don't ever participate in your own erasure. I am putting that in the chat because that is amazing. Wow, what a quote. I love it. Thank you for that, Nakia. Wow, and thank you for the question, Taylor. There is a comment in the chat that I want to read. It said, and it's from Teferi Brent, a fellow organizer here in the city. It says, excellent dialogue. It's critical to understand that because folks may have ideological differences, that doesn't mean that either side is on the wrong side of history. You can have fundamental disagreements and both be on the right side of history. Moreover, we need to allow space for younger and older folks to grow and change their minds as well. Even folks on the wrong side of history can be brought over to the right side of history. A serious study of history, especially Black struggle, proves this out, family. And so that's from Teferi Brent. We got 15 minutes left, and we sort of want to shift the conversation a little bit to two things, if we can get to both. And that is, next year, Detroit will be undergoing a series of municipal elections, including a mayoral election. Given everything that has been discussed today and some of the points that our amazing panelists have brought to the forefront, what are we doing in election year next year? What's happening, and how are you approaching it, and how are you organizing now for a really big year in Detroit next year? And the second point I want to get to after you guys answer this is on, cooperative ownership and community land trusts. But I want to ask about the electoral process for Detroit next year. Anybody? Nakia, why don't you start us off? You ended so well. Why don't you come back in? Come on in, Black woman. Don't participate in your erasure. Go ahead and say what you need to say.
Yeah, I think so. Again, I'm with Detroit Will Breathe, and so we are an organization that is known for direct action, and that is known for being immovable, and really nobody has been able to co-opt us in any kind of way, right? Or scare us off of the streets. And so to answer your question of like, what are we doing now? It's that same kind of thing. There's not a politician in this city who doesn't know we will do a car caravan around your house, but for the pandemic, we would be on your front lawn. And that's really important. That's really important for that level of like pressure to be built up. It's really important to be calling into the city council meetings. It's really important to call out the city council and to talk about the fact that there's $660 million that was stolen from Detroiters, and to talk about racist displacement in housing. And I think all too often people, when we get into a space like where we are right now, people begin to look at like, what is the candidate who's most likely to cut deals with us? Or, you know, who is the old lesser of two evils, flawed, like kind of conception that just has not worked throughout history. But what we need to be doing is figuring out how we can sustain the movement that we already have, because what power actually isn't changing minds or hearts. Power is making somebody do the thing that you need them to do. And so what it looks like for us as Detroiters is being able to force politicians, or whoever is in charge, is being able to force them to recognize like our right for housing and water and public education. And so looking at like ways of putting the pressure on people now who have come out and said that they're going to run for these positions, and making them say, like, holding them accountable, saying to them, that's great, you want to run for mayor, where do you stand on the fact that Detroiters are being displaced? Are you going to commit to are you going to commit to making sure that doesn't happen? Like, that's great that you want to be on city council, but quite frankly, the city council president thinks it's okay that taxes were stolen from Detroiters, and she also is participating in the erasure of Black people in the front of the movement and taking money from the police. So what are you going to do that's different than that, right? Instead of looking at like how we broker deals from people, kind of let them know that we're putting the pressure on you from the beginning. So be sure you want this. Be really, really sure that you want this, because we're going to be outside your house. We're going to flood your office. We're going to do whatever is necessary.
Yeah, thank you for that. I wanna punt to Izzy and get her perspective. And the important election that everybody will be talking about is the mayoral election, and we know that more than likely Mayor Duggan will be running again, but no competition is not good for any politician. So is there anybody else other than Duggan that we need to be seriously taking a look at? But as far as next year, what are you doing now as an organizer? Izzy, I'm gonna come to you, and then Landis right after Izzy.
Yeah. What am I doing now as an organizer? What am I doing the next year? So right now I am trying to still launch that new youth program. I don't have my full recommendation fully written out yet, but I am working on currently thinking like this month launching a online virtual youth space, which I'm defining youth as 16 to 21. But this space is going to be for youth who are interested in social justice to come and learn about social justice together, and more importantly, to educate each other. I think a great way that we can get we know that youth are already very, very interested in social justice. We see them already at the forefront of these movements. But I think a great way to pull youth in and to make sure that our youth are active and in the movement in ways that can help them develop and help the movement develop as well, is by encouraging youth peer-to-peer teachings. Yeah. If anyone is interested, I could post a link to an email sign up where you can enter your information and then get more info on that from us once we launch that. But yeah.
Thank you. Landis. Landis, jump in on this. We got about 5 minutes left.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to be a little vague because I can't really say everything that's happening, but the DSA and a bunch of orgs are looking at this and considering some folks for certain things. It's important because we do have to engage in this arena, and electoral politics are definitely it's not the end all be all. It's not, this magic bullet. it's a tactic within a greater strategy. And so a bunch of orgs are looking to challenge on that in that arena those in power. But it's also important, and so what Nakia said, that they have to know who they serve. It has to be, I mean, like the thing with the difference between France and the US, politicians in France are afraid of the French people. Americans are afraid of the American government. And so we have to be in front of people's houses when we don't do what we want. We have to, be at their doorstep. We have to do these car caravans because we're not always going to have people in power that align with us and agree with us. We're going to have to force these positions, and we can't wait for 6, 8, 10 years to get people perfectly positioned to get what we need and what our communities need. And so it's important to agitate on those fronts. It's important to start talking with other orgs to see how we're going to agitate on these fronts, and how we're going to leverage this moment to get what people need in Detroit.
Wow. All right. With just a couple of minutes left to go on this discussion, this has been an amazing discussion. I want to get in the question around cooperative ownership or community land trust. I know that some organizations have been doing a ton of research on that. Anybody on the panel or anybody in the audience, can you say more about, first off, define what it is and talk about your progress toward achieving, true cooperative ownership, whether it's in a community land trust or other alternative ownership mechanisms? I know, Phyllis, you have done some work around this, and I think, I want to say Michigan Community Resources also studied this. So any representatives from any of those organizations, including the panelists, want to talk about this?
Yeah, hi, this is Phyllis. Thanks, Orlando. This is something I've been looking at for a while, ever since Katrina, because down in New Orleans, they used community land trusts to establish some quality affordable homes for folks who had been displaced as a result of that. And so looking at, places throughout the United States who's done this, actually, the city of Detroit engaged an organization, and it's leaving my mind right now, have one of those senior moments that you'll grow to know and understand and appreciate. It'll come
Grounded
to me.
Solutions.
Thank you,
Solutions.
Maggie. Thank you.
Yep.
Grounded Solutions to engage in looking at a community land trust or shared equity model for the city of Detroit. And just recently, in talking with the city, that report is still being developed. But however, there's 21 community development organizations that are also looking at it. Reverend Ross over in the North End has already started with her community land trust. And so it's just a way for us to ensure that there is quality, affordable housing for people for a long time to come, as well as to help them build wealth. It's not the type of wealth that you would get ordinarily if you bought a house outright, but then a lot of folks, because of various reasons, can't really get a regular mortgage. And so one of the things that we're looking at is how can we help people build wealth in their community, sustain quality affordable housing for those individuals that are 60, 50, 40% of the AMI in this city of Detroit. And we know our AMI is skewed because it's in conjunction with other cities around the city of Detroit. And so it's not really a true picture. And that's something else that people are fighting for, to get a true Detroit AMI. And so as we talk about quality housing, which is a part of justice, everybody should have a right to quality of housing that they can afford. This is one of those methods that we look to utilize in the future in the city of Detroit.
Thank you so much. It's actually 6:15 now, so this is my least favorite part, but I kind of have to end this amazing conversation that we're having. Thank you so much to everyone who contributed to this conversation, whether you asked questions, whether you wrote in the chat, or even if you just sat in your space and observed all that people were saying. Thank you for being here with us. I heard a lot of different things tonight, and I'm just so moved and so inspired by you all. And I just want to say one thing before we end, is that although we kept talking about what we need to do in 2021, I want you to take some time either this weekend or after this to think about what you did in 2020. Because I think it's so easy to say, like, what do we have to do next? What do we have to do next? And then we don't think, like, well, what have we done through this pandemic? Like, you know, like, just take some time to, like, just, I don't know, acknowledge all the great things that you've done. And Yusuf, I'll pass it over to you.
So, Yusuf, go for it.
No, go ahead, Orlando.
No, I was trying to make sure you heard her. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, man. We covered a lot in terms of you know, the landscape of Detroit, and sometimes we tend to forget how big Detroit is, and so the things that we cover, I believe, is reflective of how big the city is, and also, you know, and the unique thing is, like, certain parts of Detroit, you can be in poverty, and then you turn the corner, you're in the middle class, and just showing the different extremes and the ability to create a place, not a safe place, but a very courageous place to have tough conversations. Because a lot of times we want to get to action, but to get to action, you have to have the conversation. You got to build the relationships. Like, we all can, you know, I'm joking saying Duggan and whatnot, but the reality is it's bigger than Duggan. Like, really, let's throw Duggan out the window. Let's throw Craig out the window. It's about the mothers and the grandmas on in the neighborhoods, the kids, our fathers, us. That we are Detroiters from Southwest to East Side, and et cetera, to be able to create a framework. And this is what Building the Engine has been able to do. I've been involved, you know, for 3 years now. I'm looking to get more involved, and it can only grow by through this process and understanding through the conversation that we're having, and the young people that we're engaging, not to have them just there because they're young, but because they represent an energy that is necessary in passing the torch. And anything of looking at history and movements before us, we failed in passing the torch. And Detroit is evident of that, where we've had too many people holding down the forefront for too long, and we need to be able to create the opportunity to have the balance of to be able to have the type of change that we want. So tonight was a very fruitful and beneficial and very authentic conversation. Thank you all for participating and being here.
Before I'm gonna turn it back over to Yusuf, but, you know, some of the big things that really stuck out for me has to do with intergenerational discourse. We heard from a lot of young people today. I still like to consider myself a young person, but they said that you know,
too, man. What you talking about?
Yeah, but, you know, I ain't 20 something no more. But I think that this is a great. This conversation that we had today is a great cornerstone for us to continue intergenerational discourse as a city, and to add and to facilitate those conversations with the utmost respect for both sides, right? I want to make sure that we don't get into the business or the habit of delegitimizing the work of young people because they are young. And I want to make sure that we don't demonize older folks because they've been here and this is work that they should have did. I think everybody is, you know, trying their best with the resources that they have. So that's a theme that it's reoccurring to me, this intergenerational discourse. The other piece that I want to bring out is how can some of these movements be integrated with community development and community development organizations. A lot of young folks are organizing and doing amazing things on the ground and in their schools. But what about, you know, the wraparound services that your local community development org provides for the community? And are there linkages that can happen as a result of this conversation and the back and forth that we had today? And the other big thing for me that I'm taking away is us confronting confronting and deconstructing the mental health stigma that we have placed on ourselves, where we don't want to acknowledge our issues mentally, our issues that have come from passed down trauma, our issues that are currently coming at us. A lot of us are in active trauma too. Like, it's not that we are traumatized. What is happening currently is traumatizing. How do we confront that? And how do we build systems and care and development processes, project processes around making sure that we make room for that? Right? Who isn't at the table, right? I'm not a licensed master social worker. I'm a project manager. I'm a facilitator. later, do we need somebody from one of the universities to come and be there to, you know, make sure that when trauma comes out, they have an informed answer, because I ain't qualified, right, to speak to certain things. And so with that's my summary of the big themes that we heard today. I want to bring it to Yusuf to talk about tomorrow.
So tomorrow we have a lot going on, but you know, digging deeper into specific around policy, specific in relationship to police brutality, in relationship to neighborhoods. So it will be a more great, fruitful conversation as we had today, and along the lines of like every voice in our neighborhood is valuable. We repeat, every voice in our neighborhood is valuable. So today and tomorrow we'll continue to hear that and build upon that.
And I want to punt to Alondra, go through the breakout sessions that will be made available tomorrow, and to remind everybody that if you haven't registered for one of the breakout sessions, please take a minute to do that. You can find a link in the chat box right now, but Alondra is going to read all of our amazing breakout sessions that are happening tomorrow. Alondra, are you with us?
Yeah, I was about to start talking. I realized I was on mute. Okay, so the first breakout session we have tomorrow is mental health in a time of virtual learning, a session designed and facilitated by young people from the Youth Collective. This will be facilitated by Surabi Prasad and Amana Khalil. And then the second breakout session is policy and politics in the neighborhood. Facilitated by Phyllis Edwards and Mac Farr, looking at what kinds of policies will be critical going forward, especially in the mayoral election of next year. And you'll get a look at the proposed Detroiters Bill of Rights. And then up on the screen is the summit agenda. But then another breakout session we'll have is development in the neighborhoods. It will be facilitated by Trina Shanks from University of Michigan, I believe, or I don't know. She will be joined by Sam Butler, Lauren Hood, and Chase Kentrell, looking at what equitable development can look like and tools they are working on called an equitable development scorecard. The next breakout session will be justice and police behaviors in the neighborhoods. It will be facilitated by Eric Williams and Gloria House, otherwise known as ANIB, and they will be joined by Nakia Walls and Des Squeers. You will get a sense of Detroit's history with police behavior, today's protests, and talk about what is meant by abolition of the police, defund the police, and public safety, and the alternatives that are being proposed. The next breakout session is equity and property in the neighborhoods. It'll be facilitated by Detroit's Future City and will be joined by Ashley Clark, Nicole Williams, and Claire Davis. Here you will look at the status of vacant land and property in the neighborhoods and hear what some research is telling us about the vacant land and how people are using it. You'll look at the relationship between racial and economic equity and property ownership and discuss some indicators to measure how we make progress on this front. And then finally, there may be a breakout session that we will set up and announce first thing tomorrow, but I'll pass it back to Orlando.
Thank you, Alondra. Listen, this has been an amazing conversation, everybody. Before we wrap up tonight, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to the link that Lauren posted in the chat box. Lauren, because you're dope, I'm going to ask you to post it again just in case it got lost so that it's fresh on everybody's chat, to take a minute and complete the short evaluation form for this evening's session. This was an amazing conversation. We had over 100 people stay on for the entire time, which is mind-blowing to me. So do me a favor and take the short evaluation for this evening's session. We want to thank Maggie and Lauren, the two-person Building the Engine team, and the steering committee for making today happen. Please register for tomorrow. We want to see you tomorrow. Thank y'all so much for joining us tonight. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock sharp. 4 o'clock. See you tomorrow.
Just clarification, it'll be Tristan Taylor tomorrow, not Nakia Wallace.
Thanks, Nakia. Tristan Taylor of Detroit Will Breathe will be there in Nakia's stead tomorrow. Thanks for the clarification. Thanks, y'all. Good night.
Orlando, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Can I get everybody to give whatever kind of applause or snapping or whatever you want to give to our three amazing hosts tonight? Woo! Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. And if y'all really liked us, we'll be back tomorrow for part 2. You get more of us. You get to see you crack jokes. That never happens.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Great job, Orlando, Shakur, and Orlando.
I love you, Phyllis Edwards. I didn't crack any jokes on you today.
Oh, but I'm gonna do something for you tomorrow. You missed your turn.
Hey, Orlando, just a reminder that the committee should stay on because we've got a little thinking and planning to do.
Yeah, so if you're on the Building Engine Summit Committee, stay on really quickly. We just need to add some structure, a little bit more structure for tomorrow. So just stay on if you're on the committee. Thank
Maggie,
you.
is that all the planning committee you want on here, or just certain folks from the committee?
We want
Everybody, Phyllis. Maria, everybody.
I'm just trying to get this survey.
Looking for her way out.
Absolutely.
Nope. You in paradise on the golf course. You all right? You can stand.
Okay, bye guys. Don't be jealous. Don't be jealous.
Gardner, good to see you.
Good to see you. Sorry, I was late. I got on though.
It's no problem. Thank you for joining us.
All right. You were on time.
I'm trying to get this survey.
Camille, if you could stop the Facebook feed. Sandra Turner Handy. Hi, Sandra. Good to
want to
see
say,
you.
I am Maggie. I am so proud of these young people.
I know.
We might be able to sit back and retire one day. Look what we got coming up.
I know. I'm telling you, Sandra, I was so inspired talking to them just to prepare for this thing that I ended up, every time I hung up the phone, I had to cry a little bit.
I know it. I'm so proud of them. Orlando, keep up the good job, baby.
Thank you. You're an OG and you helped teach me, so thank you.
Glad to be one. Glad to be here.
I know that's right. Say that.
I'll see all of you guys tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Thank you,
All
Sandra.
right, Sandra. Love you.
Loretta, I just dropped the survey in the chat. It's at the bottom.
Is at the bottom now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me see. Can I go back to the bottom? Because that's what I was trying to get.
That's Miss Loretta Powell.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay.
Maggie, are we all clear? Is this
No, I'm trying to wait till I got to sign out. It's not clicking on though. I'm trying to.
Yeah, I think people are still filling out the survey.
Okay, no problem. We're good.
Yeah, but I see, let's see, the committee, we got Yusef, we got Orlando, Chandra, Tammy, Phyllis, Maria, Alondra, Lauren.
It won't do it. Even though I'm trying to go to it, I'm clicking on it, but it's not taking me there.
Miss Loretta, let me see if I can text it to you. Is that better?
Yeah, that'd be better.
Okay, I'll text you the survey link, okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Boy, I can't wait to see the notes from this.
I knew you were going to say that. And it was like, whoa, it was so much, but so great, so great.
I tried to get him to slow down, Sandra. I don't know.
I know it's hard because there's so much passion, but I was just like, whoa.
You recorded it, right? Is this recorded?
Oh yeah, we were recording.
Okay, then we could go back and get it.
Well, I mean, not to say we didn't get it, but I'm just saying it was a lot to get.
I know.
Chandra, did you have your whole crew taking notes? I see a lot of your folks here.
Yeah, just because I encouraged them to stay on if they were available to just see if there was anything that would help in terms of preparing for tomorrow. But Rich is our official note taker, and I was his backup.
Okay. So glad it was you and not me.
Great job.
As a stenographer.
To the facilitators, you guys did a great job in keeping it moving, keeping it interesting. It was good.
Yeah, it was.
Well, from the summit host extraordinaire 4 years in a row, we thank you for that compliment, Phyllis.
Yeah, I just, are we ready? Are we starting? No.
Yeah, pretty
Come on,
soon.
Maggie, let's start because it's late already. Let's do
Yeah,
this.
we're just, we can go ahead and start while there's still a couple of other folks here. I assume they're doing the survey.
Yeah. It's okay.
But we stopped streaming on Facebook, so that's good. Basically, and this doesn't have to be long, the question for the committee is whether we heard something tonight that makes us want to set up a 6th breakout group tomorrow. So just as a refresher, the breakout groups are the young people doing the session on mental health in an age of virtual learning. There's the session on development in the neighborhoods. There's a session on equity and property, policy and politics. And did I miss one? The policy, politics, equity, development, the young.
If you want,
people.
Maggie, you might
Oh,
just
the
want to put it on the
justice.
screen.
Yeah, justice and police behavior. Yeah. Do you have it that we can put it on the screen?
I can pull it up. Give you a second.
You know what? I've got the run of show. I can set it up. Here we go. Okay. Can everybody see?
Yes.
So, mental health in a time of virtual learning, that's the young people. Policy and politics, development in the neighborhoods, justice and police behavior, equity and property. The question is whether we need a 6th one. I know 2 things occurred to me just from reading all the chat was the trauma-informed community building, which is actually a body of work that's had a lot of research behind it. So that was one that occurred to me. And then the other is this whole question of community ownership of housing and affordable housing. I don't know, everything else, I think we're hitting on a lot of it already with the breakup.
Are we hitting that intergenerational discourse and collaboration in any of these? That's huge.
Yeah, I think that's one that as
I agree with Orlando about that.
Yeah, I feel that there is probably a population that was on here that was really trying to be how would I say, like really open to understanding we need young people to lead and we want them to lead, but there's also has to be some kind of entrance or conversation, I think, on, you know, how do we do that in a way where we're not, that we're engaging the elders or the melders, the louders, the kelders, I don't know what the fuck we are, but there's like levels, I think that we have to kind of, I don't know who would talk about that, Orlando, or you know, like, but I know you brought it up a couple times, and I appreciate that. I think we're in a place right now where there's a lot of older organizers like myself that have contributions, but we also want to keep it open and real to young people. You know, I thrive on that, but how do we do that without losing those people, because they won't see themselves in this conversation.
So let's talk about that. If we go with that, who can we ask to participate? I know Phyllis would have to be one of them, wouldn't you?
Well, my thing is this, I'm already facilitating something else, but I would say that we can infuse this in the conversations that we have. How do we look at these issues from an intergenerational perspective, right? Because everything that we do, someone said something today that kind of stuck out in my mind when they talked about how we're divided by us and them. Even in this conversation, there's an us and them, right? There's a young and an old instead of a us. All of us are in this. So how do we bring our collective experiences to the table? You know, scriptures say that the young are called because they have the energy to do that, and the older because they're wise and know the way. So we know some things that will help them along the way, and they're reaching out to those folks who they think are on the, as Nakia said, on the right side of history, right? The Marine Taylors and the other, I can't think of all the activists right now, but those folks who they believe are on the right side of history. But, I think Shakur said, whether they're on the right side, no, it wasn't him, but someone said that, everybody has an opportunity. We have to provide those opportunities so that people who don't understand what it means to defund the police, because I think the word defund is the issue. It's not the issues that is incorporated in the defunding. It is the word itself, defund, which people mean we won't have a police department. So then
That's
who you
why,
gonna call?
and that point though, Phyllis, is why I think this deserves more than just it being integrated in all of the other conversations.
But I'm
Because
saying, in that even in that, we have a segment already with the police, so that piece can go. I mean, all of it has to be in a generation can be infused in what we already have. Creating a new one, I don't know.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
482 Forward, I think, is wrestling with how you do intergenerational organizing. And it crosses the, you have folks like Larry Simmons, Maria, Angie, you have the Youth Collective, and then you have a bunch of organizers in between those two ages. That, so I think if you, I don't know that anyone would have time, but I mean, I don't know if you agree, Maria, but I do think this is something that 482 Forward has been doing and wrestling with, right? I just had like 3 conversations about our summit yesterday about how we hold this tension, what you just described, Phyllis, and even more so, like, how do we still listen to each other and learn from each other? And how is that reciprocal? So, I mean, that's somebody a group that I can think of quickly that is in the thick and trying to do that work now.
But is it fair to call them at what time is it? It's 5, 6 o'clock at night and say, can you present tomorrow?
No, I don't think we do that. I think though,
we bring them in on the conversation.
I think we're trying to hit a home run versus just trying to get on first and second base. And what I mean by that is that conversation that is necessary. We're not going to resolve all the shit in that one conversation. I think the objective is we talked about it today and creating another space to continue to have that conversation tomorrow. And I think from a place of refereeing it, 428 Forward could be possibly an example of what they're doing, because we know that conversation it's a lot of nuances to it. It's interpersonal, external. It's a lot of dynamics. But trying to carry it a place where folks can just say, "Man, can you old motherfuckers get off my back?" Or can you just be honest with ourselves of how we see each other, and then because it's going to continue to build on.
Yeah. I would say, I think that's a great point, Yusuf. I would also say, so I also thought Phyllis right away and saw the challenge of her being on the panel, but the other person who comes immediate to mind for me is Maria Salinas, with her grooming a former Girl Scout to become her board chair, right? And the layers of leadership that she's developed over time in her work that I'm more familiar with in Southwest and beyond. So not to put Maria on the spot, of course, she's involved with 482 Forward as well, so can bring that lens. But I think the work that Maria has led over the last decade that I've witnessed has shown a willingness to step back, to listen, and to create space of true leadership and not just kind of facade leadership in this space.
Yeah, and I think I how can I say it? I feel like I've been a community organizer for 40 years, and I am a master community organizer. Coming out of Detroit, I never really left. And so, and I'm proud to say that. And I'm not, like I tell people, like, we got to step it up and say and call it. And, and people that know me, I just put it out there. And that's why I've been putting it out there. I think for me is the outcome. And for me right now, at this point, this era that we're in right now, even 30-year-olds are getting old, you know? And so if you're 30 years old, you're old. You know, you're not, you know, like 14.
Let me, hold on, let me stop you right there.
So, I'm just saying, and so we're dealing with this right now, and Maggie can attest to it as we're in transition with building the engine, going to CDAD. You know, there's so many dynamics that are happening right now in this era of transition of you know, who runs what, who's in the front line, who, you know, and stuff like that. I want to use this as an opportunity to continue to uplift. Is we need to figure something out that because we're better together, but we don't know each other's verbiage. You know, you know, well, the reason I'm successful because I do specific leadership development. I'm very clear on that. You know, I build leaders into organizers, and it's a small number, but it's very powerful. And so, but what I see right now is there's different levels of misunderstandings, and how do we work on that right now? And for me, an outcome is CDAD is taking over building the engine. This is about building the engine. CDAD's taking it over. This needs to be a platform. This needs to be in the front line, actual, where it's an example of how we develop a mechanism, whatever that is, that will start aligning the different age groups to be more powerful in our own realm of skills and you know, leadership or whatever. But it's really needed. And I think elders and some older people are afraid to talk. There's some young people are afraid of elders. And so how do we start this intentionality, you know, this intentional kind of conversation, you know, that we're better if we all start coming together, but that's never happened before in my experience.
So I think to get to first base, Maria, and I suggested in the chat, what if you lead a session with one of your mentees who's doing amazing work and talk about it? Again, you have a proven model, you have a model that works, and I think it'll be powerful to engage in that discourse with, you know, with one of your amazing mentees. I mean,
that would be Alondra. I mean, Alondra's been with me since she was 11 years old. You know, I mean, it's like, or Naija, or you know, I mean, Gabriella. I mean, those are young people that I've seen grow up. You know, and yeah, I'd be open. I guess, you know, I think it would be. We need to talk about that, or let's at least let young people, old people, middle people, whatever, know that we are in an era right now, and this is in many facets of this the way we're conducting business and doing things, where we're stronger if we start coming together. But we got to build that. What does that mean? You know, so we're not scared of each other, but we trust each other, and we really move the needle. You know, we can be so powerful that way. We just got to figure it out.
Do you think maybe a way to approach this would have, Maria, you and Alondra be in, I don't know how many sessions we have, but just opening up the space for people to connect with each other. Because I think the other thing, and I was giving baths and making dinner and doing a bunch of other things, but one of the things that I kept hearing was, and looking in the chat, was people wanting to connect. So maybe the way to start that conversation is having somebody intentional like you and Alondra in a breakout room, and letting people come in and join and network and start the conversation informally.
And I also just wanted to add on that I just wanted to add on that I really like the idea that if we come up with something, that it could be solved with this group versus having to go outside of the group. And then also just recognizing that there are people who've already signed up. And then people are going to be hopefully signing up at the last minute, and just the logistics of the sixth group. So the benefit of tonight is that hopefully this can be sent out to let people know immediately what the other options are, so that we can hopefully still have a balance across the different sessions if we're going to now have 6 instead of the 5.
I like the thought about what Christine just said about it being an opportunity for an open conversation, not really structured, but having Maria and Raquel and Alondra in the room to talk about their experiences. Maria, why you even started it that way, to understand that there was a need to bring younger people into this work, but also how did the young people take what you taught them and move it to where they are now, to actually being involved in the movements that they are. Hi, Adisa, it's so good to see you. And Kevin, wow. Good to see my brothers. But even, to say how they move and what their strategies are for moving the work forward. And just asking them, hey, Rick, and asking them, how can we, what do they think the road is to us working better together?
I like that. I like that.
The one other suggestion that I would have is in terms of gender balance, is there, and it doesn't have to be, but is there somebody who's a part of this call or who has been a part of this process in terms of young or elder male to be a part of the conversation, or potentially both? And Maggie, if you're talking to us, you're on mute.
You're muted. You're muted, Maggie.
Orlando, you need to be part of that conversation too. I mean, you've been at this since you were 11 years old. So, and you got a whole story. So,
yeah.
And I just wanted to add that Lauren knows that she's going to be adding, that she could potentially be adding something to the invitation, and she can resend the invitation with this 6th thing. So
that's awesome.
I'll agree to do that, Maggie. The other thing though that I'm thinking to sort of to balance out like this mentee-mentor relationship is the other piece of this is that young people like myself are moving into mid-level management or even C-suite positions with mentors or supervisors of the generation before us. That was my experience at ECN under Donna. And I think if we can get Donna Givens to say yes, to come in and have that conversation too, right? Because it's getting harder and harder for me to remember like my experience with Maggie at 11 years old, but my experience as a mid-level manager and director under Donna is fresh.
Yeah. I'm texting her right now.
Okay.
I love it.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, actually, Orlando, I wasn't even thinking about your experience with me. I was thinking about what happened, like as you got into your late 20s and just that whole journey.
Now, just for the record, so you crossed over, Orlando, you made it to 30.
31.
31, okay.
Oh, you old. That's what the kids would say, you old.
Mr. Walker out, Orlando.
Telling you,
I'm not old enough for golf, Phyllis.
Paycheck.
People Tiger started playing golf when he was 3. So you're old enough for golf.
I'm just saying.
You just won't be a professional.
All right, sounds like we have a plan. This is great.
I need some guidance though about what are we calling this? So Lauren and I need to know like what to put in it. So do we
sexy name, really sexy, really grab, like I don't know.
Intergenerational organizer. Why it's got to be co-complex?
Intergenerational, organizing between the generations.
That was not sexy. You did the opposite of sexy.
Intergenerational organizing is like jargony to me.
Okay, well, you guys, I'll leave the titles up to you.
And there was a couple of like things that people said during this talk that I feel relate to this. Orlando, you kind of went over them in the beginning.
Oh, the radicalized experience. How about that? Because somebody said we don't get involved until we're radicalized, right?
Yeah.
Radical love.
That's what my social justice mural is. Oh no, it's revolutionary love. I apologize.
Revolutionary love across generations. Is that it?
Revolutionary generational love.
Yeah. How about radical love?
I like revolutionary. I think we're in the era of a revolution.
We are. That's what the young people came up with that mural. That's why it's revolutionary love.
And how do we win the war as we come together? You know.
And we don't want love as it's been before. We want the love where it includes everyone. So that's what that mural is. So I will go with revolutionary, the word revolutionary.
Okay, revolutionary love between the generations. I'm texting Donna at the same time. Hang on here.
I love it. I love it.
Yep.
And
that is my girl.
Maria, you know what I'll do? I'll send some, there's a ton of questions or discussion prompts in my head, and I can email them to you, Alondra and Donna. Alondra, did you agree to this? You say yeah?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I figured you're going to be there anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think this is something that me and Maria have talked about multiple times. But yeah.
Maria, you're facilitating, honey?
Me? Oh, hell no.
Oh, yes.
Look at Lisa.
Where those leather pants? It's on and popping.
Orlando can facilitate, man.
Well, I think you've got the two facilitators that are going into this. You've got Alondra and Orlando, so they can continue to play that role.
Donna will be there, kind of. I think if she agrees, then we will be their partners in crime.
Yeah, I mean, you have some facilitators there.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Let the young people lead. We can follow sometime.
And Alondra, this is right up your alley, honey. You know, so, really.
I think my only question is, so is this going to be more like just a conversation that we're going to be?
Just a conversation.
Okay.
And I think,
I'm going to send some discussion prompts too, and we can workshop through them, but I'll send some.
Let's probe our audience to see if there are any suggestions that come out of this. Any, because really for me, it's like, we need to hand this to CDAD. If building the engine, CDAD's going to be the backbone, and we're coming out with some quality input from people of how do we handle this era and create a mechanism that could be very powerful, intergenerational organizing or something.
You know what? That makes me want Madhavi in the room too. Because she did a lot of this work in Toronto before she came to CDAD, and she runs CDAD.
I'm texting her right now. I'll say, hey, heads up, you should be in this session.
And Donna is saying yes. Sorry, I missed most of today's meeting. From what I could see, it was awesome.
Hey, Orlando, you're texting Madhavi?
I am.
Just say Phyllis is in this conversation and she agrees with you.
Phyllis, are you using your power over there, girl?
No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Have that conversation.
I just say I agree with him. I agree with this conversation. That's all. I don't have to text her if he texts her. Look, I'm old. I try to save my strength.
Right.
All right. All right. What else? Because it's getting late.
Yep, and I have to go to Bible study. I need my spiritual growth.
Bye, y'all.
Okay. Hey, Lauren, can you stay on and we'll just make sure we got all this right. Everybody, thank you. Orlando, you got to let us know if Madhavi is going to be there.
All right, I'll text you.
Good job, everybody.
All right.
Good job.
And thank you
all,
everybody. This was powerful stuff.
Hey, Ron. How are you? Oh my goodness, I missed you guys.
You spoke. I thought you spoke to me earlier. I thought I heard you say Ron. You just now.
I said, Rich. I didn't even see you. You laid back, looking so handsome. I'm loving you. All right, guys.
All right.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.